Extinction is no shame, no sign of disgrace or failure. In fact, in a world full of changing environments and occasional catastrophe, all species eventually
It's not the dinosaur we knew. Just look at that thing. It's not going to be friendly to us.
Introduce. Introduce.
Extinction is no shame, no sign of disgrace or failure. In fact, in a world full of changing environments and occasional catastrophe, all species eventually become extinct.
History.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Paleontologizing. So good to see all of you here today. I apologize for being 2.5 hours late today. Holy cow. But I had some important business in Berkeley this morning, so you know how it goes. This is often how Tuesdays work. But here we are. Yeah, late. I know, Lordy. I know. Yeah. But at least this was perfect timing for Dundergunder, you know? At the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? Welcome, Dundergunder. Welcome, everybody. If it's anyone's very first time here, allow me to introduce myself real quick. My name is Danny Anduza. I'm a vertebrate paleontologist. So a paleontologist, a fossil scientist who studies animals with bones. Mostly dinosaurs, which is, believe it or not, unusual for a vertebrate paleontologist. Most paleontologists study all kinds of other critters. Paleontology is the study of fossils in general. Everything from fossil baleen whales to fossil bacteria, from fossil ferns to fossil frogs. Dinosaurs are just the tip of the iceberg. Most paleontologists never touch dinosaurs. I work on dinosaurs, but I'm also starting to get into these remarkable critters, leatherback turtles. We'll be talking a bit about that today, and we'll also be covering some other fossil news about some other incredible aquatic reptiles from the Cretaceous. But it's going to be a pretty chill stream today. Again, I didn't want to keep everybody waiting for too much longer after I got home, so we're just jumping straight into things. We'll do some Metazoa, we'll do a lot of Q&A, all of that. Since this is a live science outreach broadcast, and it's interactive, you can type your questions into the chat. If you're curious about dinosaurs, or about leatherback turtles, or about anything to do with natural history, the history of life on our incredible planet Earth, don't hesitate with those questions. That's kind of the reason I'm here, you know? This is why I'm on Twitch and not on YouTube, or Blurnfold, or Grundleblort, or what are these other social media networks, video platforms, or whatever. This is Twitch. Live, interactive broadcasts. Type your questions into the chat. Anyhow. Metazoa resets in 30 minutes. Holy cow, Ladina. We gotta get to that, don't we? Shoot. Drop everything. Let's do Metazoa right now. Holy cow. I have a streak going, and I don't want to break that. Alright. Normally we'd do some other stuff before we jump into our daily animal guessing puzzle. But we got 30 minutes here. Let's do it.
Hold on to your butts.
We're gonna try and figure out what our mystery animal is using an evolutionary tree of life, a phylogeny. I like to start out with a mammal. Let's do like walrus. That's a type of placental mammal. We'll start with that and see where we get.
Ontogeny.
And holy cow, no, we're close. Get birds out of the way, says Casey Snowart. Yeah, so our critter is not a mammal. It's not even an amniote. It's not even a vertebrate. Oop. It'll help if I'd spell animal right, huh? In trying to figure out what our mystery animal of the day is, first let's go to animals here. We can use this Tree of Life program at onezoom.org to help us visualize the guesses that we're making. So, I guessed walrus, and it's like, nope, it is a bilaterian, though. And, that means bilaterally symmetrical animals.
Let's protect our fossils, because if they're removed,
cow.
America loses them forever.
Big Head Joel, thank you so much for the subscription there. I really appreciate that. Good stuff. Thank you for supporting Science Outreach here on Twitch. Thank you so much for that Prime. Excellent. So we guessed walrus. I usually like to guess a mammal at first, just because this game is kind of heavily tilted toward mammals. Our critter today is not a mammal. I said walrus to Metazoa, and Metazoa says, no, best I can do for you is bilateria. So, let's go to our bilateral animals. Bilateria, the bilaterally symmetrical animals. What do you think might also include radially symmetrical animals? Like sea stars and other echinoderms? Yeah, there we go. Starfishes, sea urchins, and more are there. So, our critter is... Let's see if we can knock protostomes out. Or maybe it is a protostome. So protostomes are arthropods, like insects and arachnids. They are things like C. elegans, these little wormy guys. Cephalopods are also protostomes. Let's go with a... somebody said fire ant in the chat. Let's go with that, Golganek. Not fire eel, but fire ant. Little arms around, nothing more variant. Are those song lyrics, or is that just an earnestly expressed opinion from Nothing More Variant? You could tell me either way, and I'd be fooled. So be honest with me, please. Yeah. Our critter is a protostome. Okay. Earnestly expressed feeling. I love that. Nothing more variant. Good stuff. So our critter is a protostome, but it is not an insect. Interesting. I wonder if it's instead going to be part of Spiralia. These are things like rotifers, and cephalopods, and chitons. Let's try something like octopus. Maybe giant octopus. We'll see if that gets us any closer. Okay. Octopodidae. It is part of the octopus family. Alright, alright. Cool. Octopodidae. Let's type that into here and see what we got. Let's go over to octopus. Octopartiformes, octopods, octopoda. I think we might have only one other... We only have the blue-ringed octopus? That might be our only option here. In fact, this might even be a blue-ringed octopus in the photo. Let's see. Is it going to be a blue-ringed octopus? Let's find out.
Hold on to your butt.
It is. All right. We got today's in 4 guesses. Not too shabby. That's pretty good, actually. That is pretty good. Yeah. Excellent. Go ahead and share that to this guy real quick. Not too shabby, especially considering I did this big rush. So less than 30 minutes left. No, hang on, that would be greater than 30 minutes. Come on. No, hang on, no, that was right. Less than 30 minutes, yeah. Yeah. Not too shabby. Let's take a look at a video about blue-ringed octopus, because, as I recall, they are highly venomous. And just cool critters overall. Let's see. Blue-ringed octopus. Animal fact files.
Octopus is more venomous than any terrestrial or land-dwelling animal, and they live in shallow water of the Pacific Ocean primarily as bottom dwellers. They can be found along the coasts of Australia, Japan, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka. Although that may sound like a broad area, because they only live in shallow, temperate waters, their habitat range is rather small. They're non-aggressive in opposition to their stigma, and are usually found hiding in crevices, empty seashells, and even thrown out bottles and cans.
Yeah, so despite what a lot of people would love to think, octopus are generally not dangerous or aggressive animals. They're generally pretty chill. They just want to hang out and do their thing and kind of explore their environment, and they don't want any trouble from you, and they don't want to give you any trouble either. You look at a lot of depictions in popular culture. Stuff like this. It came from beneath the sea. I think this was actually a pentapus? I think they only actually had the budget to animate 5 tentacles, 5 arms. Yeah. That's the Golden Gate Bridge there. Shoot. That's where I live. In the beautiful sunny San Francisco Bay Area. Holy cow. Good stuff. Yeah, watch for giant cephalopods. I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge has been destroyed so many different times in film. Does anybody have any favorite instances? Times the Golden Gate Bridge has been knocked down. That's not quite how it happened in the 2014 Godzilla, but okay. Yeah, we have It Came From Beneath the Sea. We have whatever this is. Yeah. Oh. Golden Gate Bridge, who destroyed it best? Let's see. The Core, X-Men Last Stand, Earthquake movies, Mega Shark versus Giant Octopus. That's the thing, this idea that, like, octopus are critters to be feared and fought against, I think just kind of goes against how they are as animals. You know, they're generally just very chill and interesting, and I don't know. Anyway, let's continue with our octopus, and then we'll get on to some other stuff.
If you were aware of their existence before stumbling into this episode, you may be surprised to learn that they are actually extremely small. A blue-ringed octopus will only grow to a few inches in length, and that's including their legs. Most of them are about the size of a golf ball, and that's once they reach adulthood. Blue-ringed octopuses eat crustaceans and the occasional small fish. They hunt by enveloping their prey, disallowing them to escape, and puncturing a small hole into their shell. Then they just kind of drool everywhere.
Yeah, they're
Their
probably
saliva
like
is
spiders.
toxic, so it ends.
Yeah, so they're just kind of like injecting it with their saliva, which is kind of a digestive enzyme. And then they can just kind of like slurp it out of the exoskeleton, right?
Up paralyzing the prey. Blue-ringed octopuses
too, that one
actually
guy.
have
Hello,
two
hello.
different sets of toxins. One used for feeding, just as I described, and another used for defense. The toxin released for defense, that's the scary one. Well, I guess for those crustaceans, they're probably both pretty scary. The venom itself is actually made via a symbiotic relationship between the octopus and a bacteria in its mouth. Adult blue-ring octopuses lack the ability to ink as a means of defense, so they only
interesting.
have their venom on which to rely. Well, that and those crazy blue rings. A blue-ringed octopus will only display its rings when threatened.
Oh, so if you're noticing those blue rings and going, dude, that's a blue-ringed octopus, that means it's already feeling threatened and you should probably back away. Good to know. Good to know. And there you go, Dr. Tara. Yeah, so Dundergunder was talking about this too. Videos of tourists picking them up. Oh boy.
They use these as a sign to ward off potential predators, as if saying, hey, I could probably kill you. And they can flash these rings in 1/3 of a second. So this fast. Or this fast. Like this. The reason they can perform this action so fast is because when the rings are not visible, they're actually simply being hidden under folds of the octopus's skin. When an octopus wants to reveal its rings, it only has to uncover them. Although it's not been determined how long young octopuses live before they mature, once they have matured and are ready to mate, their fate has basically been sealed, as the mating process kills both parents involved.
Yep. This is something we were talking about with Jim, actually, last week when interviewing Jim Kirkland. Let's get to that part where we were talking about cephalopods. Oh, do we not have a transcript for this one? Shoot. That's weird. Usually YouTube generates them automatically. But Claire's put together an audio one, and we do have a transcript for this. Excellent.
But we got the data.
Yeah.
We can't paint in particular.
We've got a comment in the chat about ammonites. Cephalopods today have pretty short lifespans. They live like maybe a year or a few years. Were ammonites the same way?
Years. I mean, they have, ammonites would have been the same. All cephalopods.
Yeah,
they have
been very
this
long.
But biologic timer in their system, where when they reproduce, they basically focus on rearing the eggs.
Yeah.
And then they die. That's why there's no ammonite or no octopus civilizations.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, these are animals that are as smart as 4-year-olds. Passing the information on generation doesn't happen.
Right.
So when you look at how smart an octopus is or a cuttlefish, these things talk to each other in color and texture,
it's incredible.
I mean, it's, incredible mind, but they've got this, timer in their life cycle, and they'll never become terrestrial because they have more of a copper-based blood system that's not as efficient as oxygen, hemoglobin-based system. So it's like, they've got all these great aspects. They got hands, the tentacles, large brain, great eyes. They just can't pass information on.
Right. So you're telling me that these huge ammonites that are like two... Anywho, here's a link to this video if you want to listen to my interview with Jim Kirkland from last week, state paleontologist of Utah. If you want to listen to that, like in podcast format, there it is, just audio.
Female blue-ring octopuses will remain with her eggs, protecting them until they hatch. This can last anywhere from a month to a few months, depending on the species. During this time, the female blue-ring octopus won't eat. Shortly after her babies have hatched, she'll die. This is actually common of most octopus species. The lifespan of a blue-ring octopus is a short one, which is what makes this next point all the more confusing. Blue-ring octopuses are actually kept as pets. Yes, even though they live extremely short lives, and yes, even though they are highly deadly, they are kept by some people as pets.
Interesting. It would be cool to meet with like a wildlife biologist who knows a lot about exotic species being kept as pets and that going wrong. Just sit down with them and like, let's do a tier list. What are the most dangerous species that people have kept as pets? And tell us some stories about that. I think that would be really interesting to do at some point. Should do that one of these days. Oh.
It's been theorized that this trait is actually hurting blue-ring octopus populations, Although we don't currently have statistics on the population of this animal, due to habitat destruction and the pet trade, it's been guessed that their numbers are on the decline. As pets...
That's the thing, is that they're such small critters, and they do have a wide range, so I would presume it's really difficult to actually get a handle on how many are out there. And oftentimes, this is a problem with a lot of invertebrates, is that it could be difficult to get funding to study them, because, let's face it, invertebrates do not get enough love. They really don't. It might be a little bit easier to get people excited about critters like octopus nowadays because of shows like My Octopus Teacher and that kind of thing. But for the most part, yeah, invertebrates are kind of disrespected. Not enough people care about them, and that is a problem. I try and be cognizant of this as a vertebrate person. I study animals with bones, you know? Octopus do not have bones, despite what certain Halloween decorations would want you to believe. It's incredibly stupid ones. So dumb. So dumb! Yeah. That's their whole thing, is they don't have bones. Like, what are you doing? Anyway. It's interesting to think that, like, our understanding of these animals is probably hampered by a lack of funding, because there's human beings, many of us have kind of an implicit bias against invertebrates, you know? Anyhow. In Diamond 17, yeah, other species of octopus lay 100 to 200 eggs. Well, that's the thing, is that the young are born so small and they are so vulnerable that in some clutches it might be like 0 young will survive to adulthood. So it all kind of depends on what the conditions are that year. How many predators are hanging out there? How much food is available? How many hiding spots are available? Are the conditions right for a bunch of them to survive? That's the thing with our selected species. R selected species. There's R selection and K selection. That's generally what we talk about. When we're talking about, like, the different strategies of reproduction. R selected species are ones where they have a ton of offspring and they don't invest a ton of parental care into them. So it's more quantity over quality. K-selected species. The young are often born much better developed and larger, and then there is a ton of parental care that goes into them. So we're talking about elephants. Like, an elephant might have one baby every 3 years. It might take 18 months just to gestate that baby. Like, that's the length of time that the mother is pregnant. And then that baby will stay with the mother for a decade or 2. That's K selection. Octopus do, like, R selection. They do tend to their eggs, they do guard them and everything, but then once the babies hatch, they are on their own. So yeah. With R selected species, sea turtles would also fall under this category. Like the leatherback. They produce a lot of offspring at one time. And then some years might be bad, all of them die. And some years, conditions might be just right, and a bunch of them survive. So, they can potentially recover their numbers pretty quickly if they have some good years. But that's dependent on having some good years, you know? Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know enough about R selection versus K selection to speak on it in much greater depth than that. But I'm hoping this year we will have an opportunity, this next year, to talk with some researchers who actively work on this kind of thing, you know. But yeah. Yeah, sea stars and nudibranchs, very cold in the marine. Yeah. And Raft 16, is that a tree? Oh, yeah, so... I don't know why the tree there in the lower right corner. Large K-selected trees, such as giant sequoia, redwood tree. I wonder why that is. Is it that they have like pups rather than reproducing via seeds? It's funny because I don't think about plants being K-selected. I wonder what the deal is there. Maybe this will talk about that. This is from Biology Exams for You. We'll see if this is any good. We're rolling the dice here.
Friends, welcome to biologyexamsforyou.com. Today we are going to discuss about the difference between R-selected species and K-selected species.
Okay.
Large trees like eucalyptus, all are K-selected species.
How?
K-selected species are species with low rate of reproduction, always keep their population at or near carrying capacity with long lifespan.
Huh.
Here K denotes carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is a maximum number of organisms of a particular species that an environment can support sustainably. Now moving into the difference.
So interesting. Are eucalyptus like that? Redwood trees? I'm not sure I really understand that. Because I think that they also produce a lot of very low-cost offspring. So I don't know where they're getting that, honestly. Yeah. And it says low success rate. Well, I mean, that's... R-selected is low success rate. So...
Mosquitoes of K-selected species, then the things will be very easier. Examples of R-selected species.
R-selected species.
Bacteria, small fishes, rabbit, insects, mosquitoes, all are R-selected species. Now let us define R-selected species. R-selected species are species with a capacity of high rate of population increase, but with short lifespan.
Which is interesting, like... So, these are not like... This is not a binary here. It's going to be more of a spectrum. So some of these critters are longer lived than others. So like the bacteria are not as long lived as the rabbits, let's say. But we often think of sea turtles as also being R-selected, including leatherback turtles. But I wouldn't say they have a short lifespan. We don't have a great understanding of how long, say, leatherback turtles live, because they're really hard to age. But the figure that I usually hear is about 50 years. And they also take a long time to reach sexual maturity. So, like, maybe 20, 25 years. So, like, they're middle-aged by the time they can actually start producing young. And they only do it every couple years at most, really. Like, but then they have a lot of offspring at the same time. So, you know, this is not a binary. This is not... You know, you're either this or you're that. You fit neatly into either category. Each one of these is going to be... Like, certain organisms will have certain characteristics of R selection versus K selection, that kind of thing. It is a spectrum, diatoms, yeah. Yeah. Mizart Rules says some turtles live to 100. Not sea turtles, though, Mizart Rules. That's the thing, is that we all know of, like, Galapagos tortoises. They can live 100, 200 years. Maybe more. Sea turtles are not like this. So let's look up green sea turtle. which is the most, I think, numerous sea turtle in the world. Lifespan. What is their lifespan? I think it's about 50 years, but let's do a keyword search for years. It is speculated that they take 20 to 50 years to reach sexual maturity. Holy cow, what? Individuals live up to 80 years in the wild? Okay, so it's longer maybe for a green sea turtle than a leatherback? Leatherbacks are thought to live to about 50 years, I think. Very little is known of the species' lifespan. Some reports claim 30 years or more, while others state 50 years or more, and upper estimates exceed 100 years. In 2020, researchers from CSIRO, Australia's National Science Agency, developed a method to calculate the natural lifespan of vertebrate animals by leveraging genetic markers and known lifespans of various species. From the genomic sequencing of DNA samples taken from 5 different marine turtle species, the natural lifespan of the leatherback turtle was calculated as being 90.4 years. Interesting. That's news to me. I did not know this. Huh. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Clearly, I need to go through and read this entire article again. I think I did back when I was in Puerto Rico, when I was just like ravenous for information on these animals. I need to go back and read through that whole thing. Look at all the citations, read those sources, all that good stuff. So anyway, yeah, leatherback turtles, they might live longer than I thought, but that's the thing, is that K-selected species, these are the ones that are generally longer lived. R-selected species, ones that have a lot of offspring, and don't invest a tremendous amount of parental care in them, they're generally more short-lived. So it's interesting. Sea turtles are kind of... they don't fit super neatly into that R-selected paradigm. They're more complex than that, which is interesting. Anyway, back to our blue-ringed octopus. We'll finish this video out and then we'll continue.
Many blue-ring octopuses either don't survive shipping or perish after only a few weeks to a few days after arrival. Plus, they really can kill you, and there is no known antidote to their venom. Just an FYI for any exotic enthusiasts out there. On a lighter note, as deadly as they are, and as hype as their stigma may be, there have only been 3 confirmed deaths in the past century by blue-ring octopuses.
Wow! Only 3. And those might be the only deaths attributed to any species of octopus. I would not be surprised if that were the case over the past century. So, like, yeah, I don't know. Interesting to think about. There are surely more people who've been killed by coconuts falling from trees. Or people dying from, Daisy Red Ryder BB guns, you know? More so than octopus.
Still, 3 is 3 too many in my mind, and it's always best to be cautious while in the habitat range of these tiny cephalopods. For more information on the blue-ring octopus, feel free to browse through my citations in the description.
Thomas Attack says, if we work harder, we can bring those numbers up. Yeah, there we go. See, I'd vote for you, Thomas Attack. That's some change we can believe in. Yeah. You're talking about the octopus, right? I don't want to be advocating for BB gun violence here. Ms. Art Rule says, wear a helmet when standing under a coconut tree. I mean, that's not the worst advice. Anyway, cool animal. The greater blue-ringed octopus. Wait, how many blue-ringed octopus species are there? Four. Four extremely venomous species of octopus. Cool beans. Cool. Ours was the greater blue-ringed octopus. I like how there's no lesser one. There's the greater, and the southern, and the blue-ringed octopus. Blue-lined octopus. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. And Marika says, what's better when sailing on a pirate ship? Getting attacked by a giant octopus or an angry sperm whale? I mean, people have been... There have been ships sunk by sperm whales. It's rare, but there are documented cases of this. Was it the Essex? I think was a whaling ship that was rammed and sunk by a male sperm whale. I don't know if there are any documented cases of anybody being shipwrecked by an octopus. And while giant octopus are really cool, I think they're generally very shy. They're, yeah, I think they generally don't want to hang out with people or really be around them at all. And they're not super enormous or anything. Yeah. This is interesting because over the weekend, I don't know, as we get into the whole leatherback turtle thing this next year, I was trying to do some background reading on social media's effect on wildlife conservation. And I found the work of a conservation biologist. Her big thing for a while was, kind of still is, researchers should not be taking selfies with their study animals. Like this, or like this. There could be a kind of a detrimental effect in the general public when people are scrolling through social media, say Instagram, and they see pictures of a wildlife biologist, a conservationist, a scientist, like taking a selfie with one of their study animals, often an endangered animal. That can give people the wrong impression. Encourage people to, like, go out into these natural habitats and harass these animals and try and get selfies with them. It can lead to some really nasty situations. That kind of gave me pause because this next year we're going to be diving headlong into leatherback turtle conservation and research. And I want to make sure that I'm not doing that the wrong way. You know? I want to be as responsible as I can about this. I want to set a good example. I don't want to do anything that could even potentially be perceived as harmful. So I'm trying to get in contact with this researcher right now. She's really hard to track down, honestly. But I think there's a lot that I should be thinking about there. So yeah. Gene Wen says, I agree with that take. It sets a terrible example. Yeah. Thalassophobia. I do a little bit too, Marika. Yeah, I can relate. I'm not the biggest fan of, like, being out on the open ocean, but I don't know. Or even in, like, tide pools or whatever. Anyhow, that's something I'm going to be thinking about a lot as we kind of start to develop our schedule for the upcoming year. Pull up our agenda for today. There we go. Excellent. So let's do a blue sky post. I almost forgot. Yeah. Should all pause and think. I like that, Pepe. Yeah. All right. Screenshot. There we go. That'll work. We'll let people on Blue Sky know that we're live. About 3 hours too late. That's okay. That's fine. All right. New post. There we go. We're talking fresh water mosasaurs. That's what we're going to be discussing next. Modern wildlife conservation. Leatherback turtles. And whatever else Chad is curious about on today's Twitch stream. Get in here. Twitch.tv/Paleontologizing. Here we go. And I don't really well, let's do alt text. Let's be as conscientious as we can about this. Quick screenshot of me in my office. I was late coming back from the museum in Berkeley today, so background only features some framed phylogenies and a 1/3 size 3D printed leatherback. Save. And paleontologizing post. There we go. Oh, and yeah, Charlie's Dragon, I think I actually have that on my agenda for today. Is the title something like, it's like, here's the vault that holds the end of the age of dinosaurs or something like that? I think I already have that one on the agenda if we have time. But yeah. And Claire Burr says, I think there are studies on the effect of the location itself from influencers shouting out certain locations, but I'm not sure. Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that, Claire. I don't know. I'm curious to know how much of a difference a live stream that's interactive versus like an Instagram picture has. You know, generally when people sit down to watch a live stream, like you're doing right now, there's a certain degree of context that you're getting that not necessarily going to get from just a photo, you know? And there's a level of interactivity. People comment and they go, what's going on? What is this? Where am I? How did I... What year is it? People do that in Instagram comments and YouTube comments too, but they generally don't get a response. So I don't know. I wonder how much of a difference the medium makes, you know? They say the medium is the message. What kind of message is Twitch giving, you know? Where am I? There you go, Murph, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting, Charlie Dragon. This is totally different, right? Yeah. 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 And, yeah, I don't really post it to Instagram, like, ever. Sarah's Rainbows. I need to start doing that, honestly. In fact, that should be one of our New Year's resolutions for 2026. Start finally doing the, you know, boring eat your vegetables stuff. The stuff that nobody likes to do, you know? Things like checking social media and posting things, you know? I'm addicted to not being on my phone, you know? I often get really bored when I'm on my phone. I find myself picking up a book. I gotta, you know, really get better about that this next year. Yeah. It's an issue. Thank you, Sarah's Rainbows. Yeah. It's really tough to make time for the boring social media stuff. I know, I have scientific papers I want to read. I have colleagues to email. I have encyclopedias to page through. Like, there's this wonderful one on turtles that I actually have it upstairs right now on the coffee table. I don't have time for all that, like, Instagram stuff, you know? But you kind of have to do it. So, like, ugh. Anyway. Yeah. Nice, Sarah's Rainbows, yeah. Yeah. Scheduling a certain time of the day / week can help that happen. Yeah, Casey, and that's the thing, is that, like, when I post to Blue Sky here, by the way, here's that link to that post, if anybody wants to interact with it. I, like, force myself to do this on stream, because otherwise I completely forget to ever really post anything. I don't know. Yeah. Part of the gig, so I know. There you go, Casey. Yeah. Yeah. Doesn't seem like there's much science on that platform. I don't think I have Instagram on my phone, Deathsaurus. I think the last time I posted it was via my desktop. Yeah, and Science Stream says a necessary evil. There you go. Yeah. Bulent, by the way, how are you doing? It's good to see you. I wanted to be able to raid in last night, but you still had like 12 minutes on the timer, and I'm like, I'm not going to do this to Bulent. Make him start just as soon as he went live. So we got to raid into Casey afterward. Hopefully she raided into you after that. Well, I don't know. But we'll see. Yeah. Doing okay? You're one of the few people we start early for. I don't want to make you do that, though, as Science Streams. I don't know if you're like me, but when I put the starting soon screen on, like, I'm like buzzing around the house trying to get everything together, you know, fill up my water and make sure that all the lights are okay. There's just so many different tasks to do. It's not like I'm just sitting there looking at chat. It's like I'm sprinting around getting everything ready. For me, it's sitting in quiet and getting mentally prepared. Interesting. And with me, I'm often, like, slightly out of breath when I show up on camera, because I'm, like, sprinting back to the office. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're good, Casey. No worries. Yeah. Almost a ritual. I like that, Valent. Well, but I don't want to detract from your ritual. But that is good to know, actually.
Ontogeny.
I'll be a little bit less shy about raiding in early, I guess, if the timing works out. Anywho. Well, let's see here. How was the museum? Museum was good. Yeah. I was able to, I was hoping to try out a specimen scanner today, but didn't quite get to it. Here's me with the Tyrannosaurus skeleton, complete with Santa hat for December. I ended up scanning some books instead in the library, and then had a nice conversation with the vertebrate curator at the museum. Might be starting a scanning project with her at some point next year. There's cool stuff coming up. Yeah. Oh, and I appreciate that science face. I feel the same way. You got a Wolverine biker jacket. It's a, I guess it's like a cafe racer jacket. Anyway, yeah, this is new actually. I wish I had this when I was in the UK, and I'm like, I guess I have got just enough money saved up that I can buy one when I get home, and I didn't. Anyway. Some dimensions for that T-Rex and Nicolina, yeah. Yeah. Speciation with or without splitting over time. Yeah, if you want to, Claire. Maybe add one with overtime and one without. Yeah, I appreciate that, Claire. Sorry, I'm all over the place right now. We had a big question from Starmy006 earlier, and this sounds like the sort of question that I could spend a week answering. How do you determine the differences between morphology of different fossils due to them being different species and not individual differences? Oh, and it's funny that you mentioned Psittacosaurus. Those are different species, Starmy, for Psittacosaurus. But they're different species within the genus Psittacosaurus. So... yeah. There's something like 12 different species of Psittacosaurus, if not more. And with dinosaurs, it's a little tricky. Like, for the most part, dinosaur genera are monospecific. So like when we say dinosaur species, that's generally like genus and species are almost equivalent in dinosaurs. Just historically, that's the way that they've been named. It's kind of an arbitrary thing. But yeah. So take, for those of you who are not familiar with this, in biology, whether we're studying plants or animals or fungi, whether it's dinosaurs or mammals or whatever, there's a naming convention that we use, and this is like official. You have to have a scientific name, a binomial, to describe your organism. There's the genus and the species. So for a tiger here, I think this is the Bengal tiger, Panthera tigris. The genus is Panthera, and the species is Tigris. So within a genus, you can have multiple species. And in genus Panthera, we do have multiple species. We have tigers, we have leopards, we have jaguars, we have lions. These are all within the genus Panthera. Panthera leo is the leopard. Or is it? Yeah, I think so. No, Panthera leo is the lion. What am I saying? Panthera tigris is the tiger, etc. Jaguar is Panthera onca. Leopard is Panthera camillopardus? No, Panthera pardus. There we go. Giraffe is camillopardus. Anywho, so within this genus, Panthera, you can have a bunch of different species. It's the same with Psittacosaurus. There's a bunch of different species within this genus. And are they actually all super closely related to each other? Maybe or maybe not. So yeah, assigned species. 17 species, 17, have been referred to the genus Psittacosaurus, although only 9 to 11 are considered valid today. This is interesting, and it's almost like a historical inertia kind of thing, where, like, people just started finding new things that look kind of like Psittacosaurus. Psittacosaurus sinensis. And they're like, or no, Psittacosaurus mongoliensis. And they're like, well, it looks similar. It looks like it's pretty closely related, so we're just going to name it as a new species within genus Psittacosaurus. So Psittacosaurus sinensis, Psittacosaurus xinjiangensis, Psittacosaurus malayensis, etc., etc. You just have so many of these, found in different places. And, do they all really belong in the same genus? Because the way that it works is like, if we're saying that there's multiple species in a genus, they all have to have a common ancestor. So they all have to be closely related to one another. They have to be super close on the family tree. So for instance, let's look at Panthera. Those big cats, roaring cats as it calls them here. Here we go. So, genus Panthera. We've got 4 species in there. There's the tiger, probably the earliest diverging, and the jaguar, and the leopard and the lion. Interesting that the leopard and the lion seem to be each other's closest relatives. But they all evolved from one species here, which is why we put them all into the same genus. With these modern animals, we can do things like genomic testing. We can look at their DNA, sequence it out, use that to kind of generate a family tree like this that puts the closest relatives together. You can't do that for fossil organisms. We can't do that for Psittacosaurus. All we have is their morphology. So like the shapes of their bones, the structure of their skeleton, that's what we look at. And that sort of thing can be tricky. It's difficult. Yeah. Yeah. And Starmy says, what do you need from the fossil record to show if all Psittacosaurus species are related to each other or not? Like, what do you research to answer that question? You have to code the characters. You have to do some phylogeny. Some cladistics. Do you remember that clip with Jacques Gaultier talking about cladistics? It's from the early 90s. Do you remember this, or should I play it again? Because I'd be happy to. Yeah, let's do that. So, before the 1980s, it was kind of based on, like, hunches, almost vibes, like, I think these two critters look very, very similar based on the fossils that we have, so we're going to put them as members of the same species. And then in the 1980s, we had kind of a revolution there, what we call cladistics. Which is a way to try and make things a little bit more objective. Here, let's take a look at this. Here's a different video that kind of talks about this. Amoeba Sisters, they do good work. It's gonna be a little goofy, but, you know, it's fun to watch. We'll use this as a little intro. Cladistics, the science of vibes, says Diatoms Attack. Well, we'll watch the other one first. and then we'll get into this. But there is, it's an attempt to be more objective in the way that we weight these different characteristics, how important they are. But at least there's a framework, a rubric around this, and it's repeatable, and you can code the characters in different ways and get different results, but at least it's a little bit more, slightly more cut and dry. So let's take a look at this.
Evolutionary characters.
The method is called cladistics,
What is
a systematic approach to sorting out relationships based on shared characteristics. These animals are more closely related to each other than any of them are to the dragonfly because they all have backbones.
Yep. And so you got to pick the characteristics that you think actually matter. And Jacques Gauthier is going to explain
The
this.
dragonfly does not. These three are more closely related to each other than to the fish because they all have 4 bony limbs.
Yep, they're
And these
tetrapods.
two are closer still because only they have feathers.
Yep. So you could say, well, the gull must be closest related to the dragonfly because they can both fly, and the ostrich can't. So maybe the ostrich should be over here and the dragonfly should be over here. But no. These are both birds. They have feathers. They both evolved from a common ancestor about 60 or 70 million years ago, something like that. Actually, probably more like 80. Anywho, there's certain traps you can fall into, and so you got to be real careful about how you code those
Results
characteristics.
are plotted on a branching diagram called a cladogram.
Most of the features that you have are inherited from very distant ancestors.
Yeah.
And only a few features are really unique to you. And if we wanted to find you plus your descendants, we'd have to use those unique features that arose just with you and are carried on by your descendants. And not
So this is a difficult concept to try and explain. I almost feel like we kind of need more visuals here. But yeah, it's like there's interesting characteristics that evolve, and then all of the descendants, all the offspring, the species that spring from that ancestor, they all inherit that feature. Those can be important features, but you got to make sure that you're picking the right ones. You got to make sure that you're not picking characteristics that are convergent, where like 2 similar traits can evolve independently. You got to be careful that you're not seeing those as a sign of relatedness, because they may have arose independently.
not the features that you inherited from very distant ancestors. You wouldn't want to say you're related to an ape because both of us have 5 fingers. Because, gee, so does a lizard, so does a turtle.
Yep.
Right? You'd want to say that we're related to the great apes because we both lack tails, and we're big.
To find the closest relative of birds, Gautier programs his computer with hundreds of characters that, in his judgment, are found in modern birds, Archaeopteryx, dinosaurs, and various reptiles. The computer then sorts through all the evidence supplied by Gautier to determine who's most closely related to whom.
So in cladistics, what you're essentially doing is you're finding different features. You're saying like, well, one of them might be the thumb is shorter than all the other fingers. And you might put that as a 1 in your data matrix. And if a critter say that the thumb is the shortest one of the finger or the longest one of the fingers, you might do that as a 2 or a 0 or whatever. And so you keep doing this for different features, assigning them numeric values. And then the computer spits out a family tree.
And there it is.
The computer says that Archaeopteryx's closest relative was Deinonychus, which was itself derived from other dinosaurs.
So we'll do an in-depth stream on this, I think, in the springtime. I talked with my old friend Jacob Gardner about doing this. We're going to see if we can do this on like April 20th, which is the birthday of Willy Hennig, who was the pioneer of cladistics. But yeah, the Amoeba Sisters have got a video about this too. And, you know, this is probably, we've got phylogenies here on our wall today. it's appropriate that we're diving into this subject here.
When I was a little kid, I was...
And Paybe says, so pure cladistics has a bit of maths too? Yeah, mathematics. Definitely part of this.
When I was a little kid, I was really into animals. I used to get a magazine with animal facts that I loved to share with everyone, sometimes at inconvenient times. I particularly liked insects, which are animals, and I got really good at identifying them. But not perfect, and I recall identifying a certain insect as a bee. Looked like a honeybee, had the stripes, it was on the flower, and I went into my monologue of bee facts to my father, who also is really into entomology. He quietly remarked that it was in fact not a bee. No, it was actually a bee fly, which is classified as a different order than bees. Generally, honeybees have 4 wings, he said. Most flies, like bee flies, have 2, and bee flies will not sting like honeybees do. Just tricking everyone.
Yep, so a bee fly looks like this. It's not actually a bee. It is a kind of fly. It's part of Diptera. That's the order that it belongs to. I think it evolved to look like a bee so other animals would leave it alone, thinking it has a stinger, but it doesn't. Yeah.
My pride was a little devastated. I remember going to the library and painstakingly looking through books into which I found these branchy diagrams that classified bee flies in the order Diptera, whereas bees can be found in the order Hymenoptera. These mysterious branchy diagrams returned again, many years later, when I first took biology. Except that time, I learned the one I saw was called a cladogram, or cladogram. You may hear either pronunciation.
So a cladogram is a kind of phylogeny. A phylogeny is just a family tree. A cladogram, the way that I think of it is like, that's the one that the computer spits out. You can draw a phylogeny just based on memory or whatever. You're just trying to like illustrate a concept, but a cladogram is one that like the analysis generates for you. That's a cladogram. Does that make sense?
The best way to introduce how a cladogram works, a hypothesis of relationships among organisms, is to try and build one. So from our animals video, I'm going to select some animals here from a few different phyla. A type of frog, a type of sea bunny, a type of lancelet, a type of shark, and a maned wolf. Now let's say I have a chart here that...
I like how she says woof. Not an incorrect pronunciation, just different, you know? Yeah.
Looks like this. Going to put the 5 animals in the chart, randomly arranged. Now I'm going to put some specific characteristics in this top row.
So this is coding some characters here. This is a super simplified version of what you do when you're coding characters for a cladogram. An antlers formation. Oh yeah, Disco Fountain. There's people working in the antlers formation. I betcha. And what's what? Like North Carolina? Something like that? Or is it Texas? I forget. Anyhow, Starby says, I'm really curious how researchers select the input characteristics. I imagine there's a method to it. There is, and people will argue about this kind of thing. There are best practices and things to be avoided, and we can get into that more in depth when we do a special stream with Jacob, because this is his jam. This is what he does. So yeah.
First is a notochord. Animals in the phylum Chordata have this, at least at some point in their development. A notochord is a flexible rod-like structure that runs along the back. To add, for animals that are vertebrates, it's there at embryonic development, but often gets replaced by vertebrae, although remnants can often still be found. One of these animals is not in Chordata, and thus does not have a notochord. Which is it? It's a sea bunny. We'll put an X on the notochord indicating the sea bunny doesn't have one. But all the other animals, they have it. Check. Next, vertebrae. This is for the vertebrate animals. We know the sea bunny is a no. Now, these remaining animals are in the phylum Chordata. Most chordates have vertebrae, but one of the chordates here does not, and is...
Which one doesn't have vertebrae? Of these animals, except for the sea bunny, which one doesn't have vertebrae? What do you think, Chad? Not an apatosaur missing its torso and limbs, Murph. Yeah. Holy cow, do you have a Lancet? Oh, no, never mind. I thought that was a Lancelet emote right there. Well, that would have been really impressive. Yeah.
Technically an invertebrate chordate. Which one? The lancelet. X
Yep.
on that, but the remaining
There you
have
go,
a
the
check.
lancelet.
Next, lungs. Which of these animals have lungs? This frog does, as an
Diatomy
adult
I got
anyway, and so does the
those, yeah,
maned wolf.
yeah.
None of the others. Last, hair. Who has hair? The maned wolf, Petunia's favorite animal. Hair is a classic mammal characteristic. None of the others have hair. Okay, so we got this chart. Now what? Let's build a cladogram. A diagram that serves as a hypothesis for possible evolutionary relationships among these organisms, based on these shared characteristics. I'm going to make a line and put the characteristics along here, starting with characteristics shared by all organisms in the group and moving to those shared by smaller groups. This is arranged using the most simple branching pattern, and it also reflects something called parsimony.
So when it's this simple, you can kind of do this by hand, like they have here. But generally, like, if you're doing a phylogeny, a cladogram for publication, like you're using a computer for that, you know? A lot of times the more characters you can code in, the better results you're going to get.
Parsimony, meaning it is drawn using the fewest number of evolutionary changes for the characteristics listed. Now, I'll add each organism based on the characteristics it has, placing each organism only after the characteristics it actually has.
And Tactical Grace says, I've worked with BioPython. It has at least 10 models you can use for tree construction. Are you talking about like parsimony-based versus maximum likelihood versus Bayesian versus things like that? Because, yeah, there's a bunch of like different processes that you can put it through where it'll calculate like who is closest to whom on the tree. And like there's various ways to bootstrap it and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's, again, like I said, this is really simplified here, but it should be. We're trying to get across the basic concepts.
For example, the sea bunny has no notochord, so I'm placing it before that characteristic. The lancelet has a notochord but no vertebrae, so it goes after notochord but before vertebrae. The shark has both a notochord and vertebrae, so it goes past those two characteristics. Next, the frog. It has a notochord, vertebrae, and lungs. No hair, though. Finally, the maned wolf. It has all of my selected characteristics. It goes here. You can see that the organism only gets placed beyond the listed characteristic if it has the characteristic.
Does that make
now
sense?
It's time to talk about what we have done. The whole thing is called a cladogram, a hypothesis of possible evolutionary relationships built on specific characteristics that are present in some of these organisms but not in others, as those can be indicators of common ancestry. Each intersection spot here represents a node.
Yep. And so that node also represents a common ancestor. So we're talking about evolution here. As we know, all living things are related to one another. All living things on our planet Earth share some degree of DNA. The more DNA you have in common, the more recent your common ancestor. So everything from, like I say, bacteria to baleen whales, we all have DNA. Varying degrees of similarity of our DNA, and that tells the story of how recently we shared a common ancestor. We're here. The frog and the maned wolf, at least as far as these 5 organisms are concerned, out of these 5, these are the closest relatives to each other. Because they both have lungs. They're both tetrapods. They are bony, skeletoned, more or less land animals, terrestrial animals. They are tetrapods. They're also, well, they're not amniotes. So this is an amniote, this is not. They don't. Frogs lay jelly-like eggs in the water or give birth to live young. They're not amniotes. So anyway, if we were to put a lizard on this tree, it would be right here in between the frog and the maned wolf. You can also flip these here if you want to. That's the funny thing about trees like this, is that each place you have a node, which represents a common ancestor at some point, you can flip those around. So There we go. Like this. So you can flip them around like this at each node, and it doesn't actually matter. The way to read this is these two are each other's closest relatives because they share a recent common ancestor. So yellow and green are sister taxa, as we would call it. And then sister to them is orange. Then blue is sister to them, and so is red. You can flip it around, and it doesn't matter. The relationships are the same. Green and yellow are still each other's closest relatives. And then you have orange, and then you have blue. Doesn't matter which way you spin them at the nodes. The relationship remains the same. Does that make sense? Yeah. But yeah, and Starmate, yeah, we're not sure about Psittacosaurus. That's funny that you asked that, because it's... Someday, somebody is going to go through, look at Psittacosaurus, and start to sort this stuff out. In fact, somebody's probably working on it right now in China, I would imagine. But it hasn't happened yet. It's not been published yet. Someday somebody's going to figure that out. Yeah. But yeah. And Pete B says somewhere there, these nodes represent theoretical ancestors, right? Have we actually found evidence of them? So yeah, these will represent theoretical ancestors. You're right. The chances that we'll actually find the exact species that gave rise to all of the tetrapods here, the chances of that are pretty slim. Just because we don't have enough fossils yet. We don't have enough people studying them. That ancestor of both the frog and the maned wolf, amphibians and mammals respectively, is probably something kind of like Tiktaalik. Like, this is probably what that ancestor looked like, and we have fossils of this critter, Tiktaalik, but there's also a bunch of other critters that are part of this same milieu. Things like Panderichthys is a tetrapody type fish. There's a bunch of these guys. And who is the actual, like, ancestor of the tetrapods? It's really tough to say. At least at this point. Maybe a century from now, we'll get to the point in paleontology when we can start actually making confident assertions about which fossil taxa are the ancestors of which groups. Never say never. That might be possible in the future, but it's not really possible now. We know that these critters would have had a common ancestor back in the day. That's what the DNA shows, is that they had to have had a common ancestor. But what exactly did it look like? Was it ever even preserved as a fossil? We can say that, oh yeah, you know, Tiktaalik, that is the, or Panderichthys even, is the ancestor of the tetrapods. But we don't mean that in like a strict literal sense. We're like, something like this, some critter similar to this, is the ancestor of the tetrapods. The ancestor of all of the amphibians and reptiles and mammals. But is it Tiktaalik rosier specifically? We can't say that with any degree of confidence. You know? Yeah. Maybe we'll say it casually, like, oh yeah, you're Tiktaalik, ancestor of the tetrapods. But that's like in casual conversation. And most scientists, when we're speaking to an audience, we're not speaking so casually. We want to be precise in our language because we don't want to mislead anybody. We don't want to overstate what we actually know. You know what I mean? It's one of the things that's really difficult about, like, being a scientist and trying to communicate to a general audience, is you want to strike a balance between being precise, using language that is unambiguous, but you also don't want to use too much jargon. You don't want people's eyes to glaze over. I feel really lucky in that since I can do this full time, this is my full-time job, streaming here on Twitch, doing science outreach. I get a lot of practice every day. And speaking about scientific concepts, but trying to boil it down in such a way that it's understandable by a general audience. I've got to strike that balance between being precise and unambiguous in my language, but also casual and understandable and not too jargony. You know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah. Oh no, and I'm not saying you're trying to diminish that at all, PP. That's not the impression I got. I don't think you're doing that. No. The Diatom's Attack fellow scientist says, I get a lot of practice making people's eyes glaze over. Well, I'm sure you're very good at explaining things within your wheelhouse, Diatoms. I know you are. I've seen you do it. Don't you denigrate yourself in front of all these fine people here. Can we get a shout out for Diatom's Attack, by the way? If anybody's not yet following this fine scientist who streams diatom science here on Twitch, diatoms are these incredible photosynthetic microorganisms, and they're all microscopic, right? Individually. None of them are like visible to the naked eye. There's no like grape-sized diatoms floating around anywhere, right? Anyway, they are incredible organisms, quite beautiful under the microscope. They have these calcareous, right? Calcareous tests, essentially like a microscopic shell. They produce a significant portion of the oxygen that you breathe every day. Think of them kind of like algae, little single-celled algae. Well, even though they're not actually algae, it's a similar idea. But they live in freshwater and saltwater all over the planet. Some of them even live on the backs of leatherback turtles. So, I think Dermachelys. Yeah, so Dermachelys is the genus and species of the leatherback turtle. But I noticed when I type in Dermachelys here on OneZoom into the search bar, this is not the only animal, the only organism that comes up. When I search Dermachelys, you get other stuff like this. Stomatolepis Dermachelys. Is this going to be a diatom that grows on leatherback turtles? Let's see. Oh, looks like it might be. No common name. We're zooming out here. It might be a barnacle. No, yeah, these are crustaceans, huh? These are barnacles. Okay, so there's a species of barnacle that I guess has been found on leatherback turtles. It's named after them. Let's try the other one. Elytrophalus dermachelysii. Huh. Anyhow. And a hat spookja. Good evening to you too. Welcome to Paleontologizing. Hello, hello. Starmus is a fellow Dutch speaker. Oh, very nice. Alright, this critter... Now, this is probably also a barnacle, isn't it? There's so many species of barnacle. Yeah. Oh no, it's a flatworm? Okay. Interesting. Anyway, diatoms are... How many species do we have of them? I'm gonna guess more than 7. Yeah. How many species?
Over 9,000!
No other creature in the world looks like a half-plucked turkey and walks like a pot-bellied bear.
Dino Dax, thank you for the 19 months of support. I appreciate that. Thank you. Been here online for the past 19 months. Good stuff. Anyway, diatoms are cool. You should follow Diatom's Attack. Very chilled, microscope-based streams. Diatom says the expected number of species for diatoms. That's, what was the clade called? It's weird. One Zoom gave a different clade name. What? About 12,000 species of diatoms have been documented, but it's thought that many more have not been documented. Diatom's Attack says expected number of species is in the millions. In the millions. Known species is more than 12,000, probably more than 20,000. Bacillariophyta. Bacillariophyta, am I saying that correctly? And Lilith Hobo says, when I grow up, I want to be a diatom. I mean, I wonder if anybody's dressed up as a diatom before. Diatom costume. Wow. All right. This, I'm going to presume, researcher dressed up as diatom. Denver Art Museum. She dressed as a diatom? It's hard to say. You can get diatom dress prints. That's cool. On Redbubble. Look at that. Diddy Musphenia costume. Interesting diatoms, yeah. Huh. Anyway. Diatoms are cool. Thanks for giving us an opportunity to talk about them, Diatom's Tech. If you want to hear more Diatom talk, really get the skinny on these photosynthetic organisms, go follow Diatom's Attack. Let's get one more shout out in the chat there. Yeah. And Starmy008 says, bit of a basic question, but in the line of evolution, when do we say that a new species evolved from an old one? What check marks does a species need to be recognized as different enough? Holy cow, you're asking the tough questions, Starmy, the ones that we argue about to no end. Like, these are the... That's the thing, is that in biology, things are squishy, complicated. They're not cut and dry. And I think in some ways that's where a lot of people get frustrated with this kind of science, especially if they come from other backgrounds. Like, I've had conversations with physicists and chemists, people who are used to more things with more, like, hard boundaries. Like, oh, well, we can do this all through math. It's like, that often doesn't really work for biology, because our stuff is just, it's more difficult. Like, there's many more variables. It's more complicated, it's more complex than simple physics or chemistry, you know? And I'm not saying simple as a way to denigrate those fields, it's just... fields like biology are more complex. There's more variables there. You've got more gray areas. It's just the way that it is, you know? I think that's really a better way to characterize different sciences. It's not hard science versus soft science. That's, I think, a fundamental misunderstanding of how science works and how complexity works. Denver Fowler used to talk about this, but he would say it in kind of a more inflammatory kind of way. Denver would go, I don't believe in complexity. It's just increasing layered levels of simplicity. Stack up until there's a lot, and it becomes complicated. Anyway. That's the thing, is that when you're dealing with physics, it's like, it's the basic building blocks of the universe. How do particles interact? What are those fundamental forces? And then you go a few levels up from that, you get into chemistry, you know? these atoms interact? What are their relationships? What are they doing? And then you get a lot of that stacked up and you get into the science of life, biology, or, for non-life, geology. There's a saying that chemistry is applied physics and geology is applied chemistry, or biology is applied chemistry too. And then when you mix geology and biology, you get paleontology. Again, we are oversimplifying here, but I'm trying to make a point, and hopefully it's understandable. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? I hope so. Anywho, so the point is, when we're trying to figure out, say, in an anagenetic lineage, so like, here we go. We were talking yesterday about anagenesis versus cladogenesis. Two different like modes of evolution. In cladogenesis, you have a splitting event that happens. For some reason, a population gets fractured, and then those organisms can't interbreed anymore. They evolve, they start to change over time, and they change in different directions, and they eventually become different species. That's speciation with splitting. So here, eventually you can say that these two become different species, but like, where do you draw that line? How different do they have to be before they cross that invisible boundary where you can call them different species? It's kind of a ship of Theseus kind of problem, if you're familiar with that. Which some of you might not be, but this is like an old thought experiment where, say there's a guy named Theseus. He's got a boat. He's working on the boat. He's replacing it piece by piece over time. At what point does it become a different boat? You know? Is it when 50% of the parts are exchanged? Is it when 70% of the parts? Like, it becomes an arbitrary thing. When do you call it a different boat? If anybody here in the chat has worked for, like, the register of naval ships or something, they'd be like, well, it becomes a different vessel when it gets a different registry number and, you know, it's put into the logs as a different vessel. Yeah. When you give it a new name, says Murph, there you go. Yeah. So anyway, but the point is, it's arbitrary. Like, when do you call it a different boat? This is the ship of Theseus. There we go. Whether an object, and most common stating of the paradox of ship, is the same object after having all of its original components replaced with others over time. Does it have to be all of them? You know? So yeah. Anywho, so you've got that problem in cladogenesis. At what point do you call them different species? Is it when they can no longer interbreed in the wild? But what if they still interbreed in captivity? You know, we have things that we would 1,000,000% call different species. Like, sturgeon and paddlefish have been separate for, you know, how many tens of millions of years? And yet, they can still interbreed and produce offspring.
Thank you.
It's wild, you know? So, like, here's the thing, is that biology, the living world, living things, organisms, are more complex and complicated than we like to think about oftentimes. As human beings, we like to put things into neat little categories. We want to put them into their tidy little boxes and say, oh, these are different things. We have named them as such, and so they're different. But oftentimes, they're squishier than that. Those Venn diagrams overlap a bit. At what point do you call things a different species? You know? In order to be a good biologist or paleontologist, you've got to be comfortable with some degree of ambiguity, you know? You have to understand that, like, that biology is bigger than binaries. There's a cool t-shirt that, some of you might appreciate. Yeah. The natural world is messy and complex and full of all kinds of ambiguities and gray areas and hybrids and exceptions to different rules. I find that interesting and exciting and inspiring. But certain people, like certain personality types, are really thrown by that, and they really hate it. And it's interesting, like when you, and some scientists are like that too. It's like they like a very mathematical approach. They like things to be cut and dry. They're uncomfortable with the idea of complexity or ambiguity. I've met a lot of physicists like this. Not a lot, a few. Enough where it's become like an archetype in my head. And I've met a lot of engineers like this too. Well, they're like, well, that can't be real because it doesn't fit into a box. It's like, what are you talking about? It's in the natural world. It's like, you can look at it. Look at it right there. I know it doesn't fit into this neat little box in your head. That's not its problem. That's your problem. You know? So yeah. Here's a link to that shirt there too. This is from Skype a Scientist, whom I probably should reach out to in the coming year. Anyhow, yeah, tiny boxes made of ticky tack. There you go, and they all look just the same. That thumbs attack. Yeah. Yeah.
In at number 8, we have the Tradoon.
The what?
The Tradoon.
There you go, Sibley. Thank you for the 10 months of support there. Really appreciate that, Sibley. Thanks for keeping me here online for that long.
The Tradoon.
Appreciate it. Yeah. And Starmate, yeah, there you go. Reminds me of something that Clint from Clint's Reptiles said. Paraphrasing, all science is wrong as it's a model to try to describe nature. I didn't get what he meant, but this example does make the meaning more clear. Good, yeah. So, like, I don't know, I wouldn't say that it's wrong, but it's incomplete, you know? The natural world is... When I talk about the natural world, I mean nature, living things, the planet that we live on, the galaxy that we are a part of on our planet Earth. All of this is complicated and fascinating and interesting, and when we, with our very human minds, try to describe it, try to make sense of it, we're always going to come up a little bit short, you know? Doesn't mean that we're wrong, per se. I'm not trying to make the point that, like, oh, this is all futile and why even bother? That's the opposite of what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is there's a wonderful, beautiful, wondrous complexity about all this. And we're doing our best to make sense of it with our feeble human minds. And science is the best method that we have for making sense of that. Testing ideas, discovering new evidence, building these frameworks that we can use to make testable predictions about things. I guess what I'm arguing for is like an embracing of the complexity and a humility going into this. It's like, shoot, this stuff is really weird and cool and fascinating. Let's do our best to figure it out and not kid ourselves into thinking that, like, every explanation we come up with is going to be complete. Because it's not. There's always more to learn. Yeah. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. So let's improve that philosophy, you know? Let's make it better. Let's adjust it when we find new information. Let's embiggen it through the process of discovery and testing and science. Yeah. Science in this economy? Oh, Shark Geek. Yeah. Yeah. Anywho, yeah. And nothing more variant. You're gonna become a teacher? Holy cow! Nothing more variant. That is so exciting. Just entered a certification program to become an English as a foreign language teacher. Very, very cool. New unexpected thing for me. Thought people here would appreciate that. This stream is a great model for how to teach complex material in a relatable fashion. Oh, nothing more. I'm touched you would say that. Holy cow. I'm proud of you. That's awesome. Go out and teach and make the world a better place. Have fun doing it. That's awesome. And the thought that these streams have encouraged or inspired you in even the tiniest way, that makes me really proud too. Thank you. Yeah. And a Moxie Drinker. Hello, hello. Yeah. There are strong counterexamples to hard science being dry, crude, physical. I mean, yeah, nothing more. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I'm not saying that all physicists or chemists lack imagination or are uncomfortable with ambiguity. That's not what I'm saying. That is a bit of an archetype, though. So yeah, yeah. Yeah. Last summer, funny how people went to town discussing whether it was cromulent or not. I did not see that, Claire. That's really funny. Anyway, where were we? Oh, we were talking about... Here, let's get back to phylogenies here. Cladistics. How living things are related to one another. And so when we're making a phylogeny like this, an evolutionary family tree, a cladogram like this, this is, like they said earlier, kind of a hypothesis for... There we go. A hypothesis of the relationships among organisms. So living things, how are they related to one another? And I think, like, every time we see this on, say, Wikipedia or anywhere else, any other fine venue you get your cladograms from, let's look up, I don't know, Suchomimus, Spinosaurid dinosaur. Do we have a phylogeny here? We do. Bingar. So this is a hypothesis for how these different spinosaurs are related to one another. And you'll see there's probably a citation here. Although not ruling out this possibility, American paleontologist Chris T. Barker and his colleagues established in 2021 a new tribe within Baryonychinae named Ceratoseucopsinae. Clade that includes Ceratoseucops, Rhiperovenator, and Suchomimus. Their cladogram can be seen below. So this is a reproduction of their results. This is a hypothesis that they have for how these critters might be related to one another. And if you tweak the data just a little bit, you will get different phylogenies. So each one of them is, there's a little bit of interpretation that goes into it, but these authors have put a lot of thought into this, and I'm sure they could argue, they could make a really good argument for why it should look like this, based on the way that they did things. But the thing is, you discover a new kind of Spinosaurid, and you plug those data into this tree, and it'll change the topology of it. Like, some of these different critters will get swapped around. This is incomplete. It does show important things like, yeah, Suchomimus seems to be closest to Rhiperovenator and Ceratoseucops. But it shows that, like, based on what we have from these animals, They all seem to be allied with one another. But you find another skeleton of one of these guys, and it has some unexpected feature, they might jump around on the tree a little bit afterward. So we have incomplete information. We're doing the best with what we have. But there's always some degree of ambiguity there, you know? Never take any cladogram like this as, you know, absolute truth, because it's not. That's not how it's intended, you know? You're reading it wrong if you're thinking about it that way. So yeah. And Murph says, is there a different name for a phylogeny put to time? Yeah. So we have cladograms that have stratigraphy kind of built in. So here we go. I'm trying to find you one. It should work. Where did you check? Oh, come on. Come on, ResearchGate. All right, here we go. So these are these crustaceans? Who are these? Oh, brachiopods and phoronids. Interesting. So these are different invertebrates, different clammy guys. And so these are plotted over a geological timescale: Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic. So it shows that these critters exist for a certain amount of time and then they go extinct. They disappear from the fossil record. So you can have, like, phylogenies that are laid out with a time component to them. And this is not uncommon. Yeah. Brachiopods, they're going to overwinter. Yeah. And it's slipping my mind what we normally call these. There is a name for it, or a few different names, and it's escaping me at the moment. Again, if we had Jacob here, he could just tell us in a breath what it is. But, yeah. Dinosaur theme display this year. Oh, very cool, Moxie Drinker. Nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to our video with the amoeba sisters here. Here we go.
Common ancestry. Each intersection spot here represents a node, an intersection that can represent a common ancestor.
There we
This
go.
branch here that stems off this node can be considered a clade. A clade includes a common ancestor and its descendants. So while it can be one branch here, a clade can also include more branches.
Yeah, I get. Would this be a clade? Yeah, I guess it is. I would probably like cut it off right there so it doesn't. Because a clade is the ancestor plus all of its descendants. So, yeah. So this is a clade. I guess that would be a clade there. You just have to cut it off before it gets to the node, I guess. I'm being real nitpicky about this. Apologies. And Diatomus says they show the abundance as width of the line in the dendrogram. Oh, hang on. Did I misinterpret something Diatomus said? Rid of that tab. I like sausage diagrams was just suggesting we look at one. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's the one with the when they splay outward to show how diverse the clades are, right? Is it like this? I'm thinking of the ones too where they show them branch out and then like they go extinct, and then you have other ones that expand. Is this it? Dendrogram, almost like dendrochronology, like tree rings. Thinking the type you were showing. I'm confused. Is it this one we have on the screen right now, or a different one? Oh, the kind I was saying. I hope I'm not causing you any stress where you're like furiously typing right now. I'm not trying to do that. But anyway, yeah. Google sausage diagram paleontology. You trying to lure me into a TOS violation there at Diatom's Attack? I don't think this is it. I'm not getting it. No. I literally did. I did type sausage diagram paleontology. There it is. That's not. I'm not trying to troll here. I know that I see these all the time in like invertebrate paleontology textbooks and stuff. Let's see if I can find one in the wild here. By which I mean in my personal library. I need more invert paleo books. There we go. Invertebrate Paleontology and Evolution. Clarkson. I betcha it's in here. Spindle diagrams. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, I bet you we'll find some in here. Get that focused up. There we go. So... should probably be early on, I would imagine. As we're talking about these different clades. When they arise and diversify and go extinct. Oh! No, not quite like this. This shows when they arise and go extinct, but it doesn't show that broadening out. And they diversify. Spindle diagram, but this is what we're looking for. There we go. Yeah. This is it right here. So like you get different groups of organisms that first arise, and then so different groups arise, and then they expand. There's a lot more species that evolve. They become more diverse, and then, bow, right here at the Permian-Triassic boundary, this group, which is what? Sharky guys? Chondrichthyan fishes? They see a big diversity hit here. A bunch of species go extinct. There's a bottleneck, and then they slowly start to diversify again throughout the Jurassic and Cretaceous and Tertiary period. Yeah. So this is what Diatom's Attack was referring to. Yeah. Shoot, look at the teleost fish right here. Or maybe these are just bony fish? But yeah, they also take a hit at the Permo-Triassic boundary, the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history. But they don't go completely extinct. They manage to cling on, and they just get more and more diverse, more and more species evolving over hundreds of millions of years until you get to the present. Look how diverse they are. Holy cow. Mammals see this too. At the Cretaceous Paleogene boundary here, mammals just explode in diversity. Like very spindles of thread. Yeah, there you go, nothing more right. So this is another way to kind of visualize. This is a phylogeny, so this is an evolutionary family tree. But the main point is to show you how diverse these different clades get over time. And when they take big hits in diversity, when a bunch of species go extinct, like for squamates here, for lizards, they take a big hit at the end of the Cretaceous. Birds actually do too. There should be like a big bottleneck right there before they diversify again. So should mammals, frankly. Something like 90+% of both mammals and birds died out at the end of the Cretaceous, so it should be more of an hourglass shape there. But anyway, yeah. And Charlie's Dragon says, shouldn't reptiles and mammals split much earlier than the end Permian? That's a really good point there, Charlie's Dragon, yeah. That's another way that this is wrong, that the mammals and reptiles, yeah, they should be splitting back here in the Carboniferous. Yeah, so like, we should scoot this one down to here. Yeah. Anyhow. And K-Pop Kebab says, what should we call the extinction event caused by humans right now? We kind of have a name for it already. The Anthropocene extinction event. While it's controversial whether or not we should actually include this in the geological timescale, I think we shouldn't. It's way too short so far. I don't want to underemphasize how much of an effect human beings have on the planet and all the havoc that we've been creating. But, yeah. Number 6 says Diathel's attack. The 6th mass extinction. So yeah, there are lots of people working on this, K-Pop Kebab, yeah. Yep. It's also called the Holocene extinction. You want to read more up on it? There you go. Yeah, there's the dodos being slaughtered by heartless Dutch sailors. Yeah, anyway. We'll get back to our video here. So here's a different kind of phylogeny. This is a simpler one, just trying to show the relationships between these different critters. Whereas your spindle diagram, this is showing like how diverse these clades are over time. But this is more simple. This is just showing 5 different critters and how they're related to one another.
Stems off this node can be considered a clade. A clade includes a common ancestor and its descendants. So while it can be one branch here, a clade can also include more branches. Now to note, our cladogram is not to any specific kind of scale. Our line in our cladogram does not represent a time scale. Instead, our cladogram shows physical characteristics that these organisms may share and could show potential evolutionary relationships. The sea bunny doesn't share any of the listed characteristics with these organisms.
Yeah.
If I'm looking at the lancelet, shark, frog, and maned wolf, I would consider the sea bunny, which does not share any of the listed characters here, is an outgroup. It has the least shared characters. In our example, it has none. If my focus is the lancelet, shark, frog, and maned wolf, the notochord is a shared ancestral character. All of them have a notochord at some point in their development. The ancestral species of these 4 organisms, right here at this node, had this notochord. In this cladogram, lungs are considered a shared derived character for this frog and maned wolf, indicating that this trait evolved in a common ancestor they share. Shared derived characters are not found in all organisms in a cladogram, which makes them useful for inferring how organisms may be related.
So here, they picked lungs as the characteristic that unites frogs and maned wolves. But you could pick a whole bunch of other characteristics, like having bony bones, as opposed to like cartilaginous bones, like sharks. You could have, the presence of limbs. You could have lots of other things like that. Having like certain structures in your skull, or number of limbs, or whatever else. There's a bunch of different characteristics that unite the frog and the maned wolf. Lungs here is picked kind of arbitrarily, but that's the point. Is like the more characteristics you put into a cladistic analysis like this, generally the better your results are going to be. Because maybe you accidentally pick a characteristic that's not really that informative, and that could really kind of screw you up. A good, robust cladistic analysis will have a bunch of different characters, so that even if a few of them don't actually mean much, if like maybe you should have avoided them, they will be outweighed by all the good ones. Does that make sense? Yeah.
This shared derived character can support that the maned wolf and frog share a common ancestor that had lungs, is represented by the node. This also can support that, when looking only at the organisms we have, the maned wolf and frog share a more recent common ancestor with each other than either does with the shark.
Yeah, and so we can look at this on, say, one zoom as well. If it'll load. Come on. Sometimes it goes down. Well, we could try Evo Geneo instead, see if that's working. It tends to be a bit glitchier, but here we go. So, what were our critters again? Frog and maned wolf. So, let's find them. So, frogs are here. This is frogs and humans. We'll see if we can do frog and... They're not going to have maned wolf on here, but they will have, say, dogs. Cats. Oh. Here's dogs and cats. Okay. So dogs and frogs. They don't have maned wolf. Dog is the closest we're going to get on this tree. So, yeah, these critters, 98 millionth great-grandparent they share in common. 355 million years ago they split. This is closer than, say, the frog and the shark. Let's go to sharks. Yeah, gotta go back way further in time, 470 million years ago, to get to the common ancestor of the frog and the shark. Does that make sense? So a maned wolf and a frog are more closely related to one another than either of them are to the shark, as she just said.
It also can support that, when looking only at the organisms we have, the maned wolf and frog share a more recent common ancestor with each other than either does with the shark.
Yep.
But when looking at...
Does that make sense? Wombat Hole says, where do turtles fit? Generally into, any kind of space that's large enough to accommodate their shell. Oftentimes they can pull their limbs into their shell, so you can fit them into a lot of spaces. They're generally a pretty compact animal. You meant on the tree. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that. So turtles are here. So yeah, it's funny, the common ancestor that the shark and the frog have 470 million years ago, that's the same common ancestor that the shark and the turtle have. frogs and turtles are both tetrapods, so it makes sense that they have the same common ancestor as the shark. But anyway, let's go to turtles and humans, why don't we? If it'll let me, come on. So many, like, bugs in this. It's hard to... Programming bugs. Alright, we'll do box turtle and water birds. Box turtle and mammals. Nope. Hang on. Why is this doing this? Turtles. Turtles and mammals. They share a more recent common ancestor. So this would have been the first amniote, about 325 million years ago, give or take. So yeah. Yeah. The jawless fish got busy. Yeah, Diatoms, yeah. Yeah. So anywho. Oh, nothing more? Hey, thank you for being here. Good luck with the new teaching gig. That's so exciting. Best of luck. That's awesome. So much less interesting than dinosaurs. Yeah, well, most things are, unfortunately. Appreciate you, nothing more. Thanks for being here. So anyway, let's go back to that.
Looking only at the organisms we have, the maned wolf and frog share a more recent common...
Substantial change in evolution. If extinction didn't occur, a successful group would dominate and it would last forever.
Hyverius, thank you for the 9 months of support. Thank you for helping me avoid extinction myself for that long. What Stephen Jay Gould is talking about there is, well, is this. You get these big extinction events, like at the Permo-Triassic boundary, or the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary, and that's where you get these big shakeups in evolution. So, like, here the cartilaginous fishes were doing really well, and then they take a big hit. And some of those bony fishes, who also take a hit, they're able to diversify because a lot of those niches were left empty from the extinction of some of those cartilaginous fishes. Some of those shark relatives, they take a knock here, and so do the bony fishes. But they may have done a bit better in diversifying since then. Honestly, same with the mammals, where, like, the mammals, their big break was the extinction of the dinosaurs, except for birds. So that's what Stephen Jay Gould meant there. Not that extinction is a good thing, especially not nowadays when we as human beings are causing it. But when you've got, like, a big change in your cast of characters in this pageant of life on Earth, usually that occurs because something big happened and a bunch of critters go extinct. If you don't have those major shakeups, those mass extinction events, if you don't have those, then you don't have those new groups coming to the fore and taking over. Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, and hello to you, Alexander Morrison. Thank you for saying hello. Appreciate you. Hope to see you tomorrow. And Starmy says, big shout out to the lampreys, hanging in there since forever. Yeah, so lampreys are agnathan fishes, jawless fishes. I bet you they've changed a lot since they first showed up. But yeah. Anyway, there's this idea that pervades popular culture and, like, public understanding of the history of life on Earth that, like, oh, there's some species where they just stick around forever and they never change. And that is incorrect. A bunch, well, most of those critters that you think of as being, like, eternal and never changing, they actually do change quite a bit. It's just, you kind of have to know these groups really well to be able to spot those changes over time. Things like horseshoe crabs are probably a good example, where they might look superficially similar today to the ones that lived back in the Cretaceous period, but, like, to a horseshoe crab expert, there's gonna be a lot of differences. So yeah. So yeah. Lampreys, they have been around for a long time, Starmy. I bet you they've changed quite a bit too. Yeah. Huh. Anyway, I don't know enough about lampreys. But yeah, and Wombat Hole. Yeah, I saw that guessing game for sharks on Shark Geek's channel. Can we get a shout out for Shark Geek, by the way? Have I neglected to do that so far during today's stream? If you like sharks, if you want to learn more about sharks, if you want to help aid in shark conservation through better understanding and public outreach, go follow Shark Geek right now. He works on these critters. That's his big passion, and that's what he does on Twitch. So yeah, go follow Shark Geek. He's gonna be doing a partner push soon. You bet, Shark Geek. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Anyhow, Charlie's Dragon says everything changes, and everything has ancestors back to the dawn of life. Very true, Charlie's Dragon. Very true. And Wolvulus, how are you doing? Hello, hello. Hope you're having a good day. Yeah. And Starmy says about the lampreys, I meant as a group. They've been around. They didn't need jaws to be cool. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They've been doing their jawless thing for a while. Anyhow, you know who does have jaws, though, are frogs and... I almost said aardwolves. Maned wolves.
Looking only at the organisms we have, the maned wolf and frog share a more recent common ancestor with each other than either does with the shark. But when looking at a cladogram, sometimes students get a misconception. This cladogram does not support, for example, that this maned wolf evolved from a frog.
So that's frustrating because you'll see this, like, a lot of creationists and other, like, anti-science people, they'll often say, well, you know, this diagram shows that scientists think that maned wolves evolved from frogs. It's not what it's saying at all, you know? So don't get it twisted. Yeah, I really wonder whether they're trying to be deceitful or whether they just don't understand or whether it's a distinction without a difference. But anyway, yeah, don't get it twisted.
This cladogram does not support, for example, that this maned wolf evolved from a frog. Rather, they share a common ancestor. Remember, this cladogram...
And aardwolves do have jaws, too. That's correct. Charlie's Dragon and Sloppy Salamander, yeah.
...is a hypothesis based on shared characters. But there are types of evidence we could use to build a better model. Molecular evidence, such as DNA, or amino acid sequence data, for example. And that matters because there are some events, such as convergent evolution or a loss of traits, that could happen along the way that could make a cladogram, a hypothesis, inaccurate, with the need to make some changes. And while I use the simplest branching pattern possible for this cladogram, it isn't the only branching pattern that exists, and that is something to recognize.
Oh yeah, you can have many different ways to draw a cladogram that still communicates the same exact information. So like we talked earlier about how... Here we go. You can spin your cladogram around at any of these nodes and it still portrays the same exact information. It just looks a little different. Yellow and green are still always next to each other, no matter how you spin it. And then orange is still sister taxon to this clade that starts at this node. You can do this. But you can also draw your cladogram in a lot of different cool ways. Like, one zoom is not working right now, it seems. Oh, it is. Okay. You can also draw it like this. Almost like a fractal kind of deal. Zoom into the maned wolf here. There's lots of different ways to draw it. The way that you draw it doesn't really matter as long as it's still communicating the same information. So like we could snip this off right here and then draw it as like a straight lined cladogram with those straight lines coming off at 45-degree angles or whatever it is. Like this. You could draw it like that and it would still be the same information, you know? These are like stylistic differences.
For example, notice how I could change the branching pattern here to look like this.
See, this is just like we did with this. You can spin them around, and it's still communicating the same information. How cool is that, you know?
And this branching rearrangement is still considered parsimonious. This cladogram still reflects the least amount of evolutionary changes, though it's not as simple as my linear branching pattern.
So yeah. So it's... Often we'll choose one way to communicate this information, one arrangement, because it looks the simplest. But it's important to understand that we're not saying that maned wolves evolved from a frog, which evolved from a shark, which evolved from a lancet. That is not what we're saying. It's just like a simple way to arrange this. The frog and the maned wolf both came from a common ancestor. Kind of a hypothetical one, but that critter did live. We just don't know exactly what it looked like or when. But it had to have. Same with these critters. They share a common ancestor with a shark if you go back far enough. And the shark and these guys share a common ancestor with the lancelets. Yeah. And the snake around the text box says AP. And there you go.
Evolutionary changes, though it's not as simple as my linear branching pattern that I had done.
And Wolvulus says, but if you change the direction of the cladogram, doesn't it no longer take evolution over time into account? And which species appeared before the other? That's not what this is showing, no. So there's no time component to this. There kind of can't be, because all of these guys are living today. These are modern species. They're still alive right now in 2025. It's not saying that this one evolved first, before the shark, or whatever. It's not saying that. So, again, it's only showing the relationships. And I think they said this earlier in the video before you arrived. So, here we're at 953 there. Let's go back to here.
Also include more branches. Now to note, our cladogram is not to any specific kind of scale. Our line in our cladogram does not represent a time scale. Instead, our cladogram shows physical characteristics that these organisms may share and could show potential evolutionary relationships. The sea bunny doesn't share.
So yeah, does that make sense? 950. Oh, no. Looking at the wrong number. Anyway, yeah.
Reflects the least amount of evolutionary changes, though it's not as simple as my linear branching pattern that I had done. But I want you to notice this rearrangement here, because some students get a misconception and think that cladograms are showing different levels of evolution, thinking some of these are higher levels than others, but I rearranged to demonstrate that's not what cladograms show. Instead, they show how lineages diverge in common ancestry. I could even switch the maned wolf and frog here. These tips can rotate around this node without changing the evolutionary relationships they represent.
Again, it's like this that we were showing earlier. Same exact thing. I'm so glad that I found this. And I'll give you a link too. I was talking with Jacob at SVP about this, and I really wish I had like a 3D printable thing I could spin around. I don't even need to do that. Here it is on Sketchfab. We can just look at it on the screen, which is great.
They both still branch from this node, the node representing their common ancestor in this cladogram. Also notice the tip near the lancelet. These tips can also be called terminal nodes, sometimes a bit confusing with the word node in it. For that reason, I prefer referring to them as tips. Anyway, notice how these two tips are close together? While those tips may be near each other, relatedness is not related to how close these tips are to each
Right, you gotta look at the nodes. The nodes are where it's at.
other in my cladogram. It's the internal nodes, as those internal nodes represent common ancestors.
So this sort of thing comes as second nature to somebody like me, because I don't know, I look at these diagrams all the time. I talk about them with my colleagues, but I recognize that to other people who are not well versed in this, there's so many different confusing things about it. Jacob calls it tree thinking. Got to get into tree thinking, and I keep forgetting to see if there's any resources on the Understanding Evolution website. Oh yeah, here we go. Beautiful. tree thinking basics. Tree thinking, or phylogenetics, is an important way of understanding evolutionary relationships.
From the National...
Oh, and we've got a video here. Well, that is super cool.
National Evolutionary...
And it is kind of like a menorah makeaway. Actually, you could make a cool menorah using a phylogeny like this, a cladogram. It's an interesting idea. Yeah. Happy Hanukkah, by the way, to all who celebrate. There's a DNA menorah with it's a cladogram. That's super cool. Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is the closest we're gonna find. But yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. Anyhow, let's check out this video.
And Understanding Evolution. This is an Evolution in the News supplement on tree thinking.
Phylogenetic trees represent relatedness, or who's related to whom and how closely. Phylogenetic trees come in many shapes and sizes and may be based on various kinds of data, including molecular, morphological, and chronological, but they all...
Tactical Grace says the menorah is the 7-branched one and the Hanukkah, the 9-branched one, no? I want to say that a Hanukkah is a type of menorah. It would be a species within that genus, to use an analogy. I don't know, it's been a long time since, since I was teaching at the temple. I don't really remember these things. I didn't grow up with that, so... Somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
All represent relatedness.
A fundamental concept in trees is the passage of time. In all the trees, time progresses outward from the root toward the tips of the tree. For this tree, time progresses from the left to the right.
Most trees have a root, as shown here, which depicts the common ancestor of all the species on the tree.
Yep.
The horizontal and vertical lines that lead to the tips are called branches.
The points in the tree where single branches split into two are called nodes.
Yep.
The node implies that a speciation event occurred. In other words, that a common ancestor...
Thomas Attack says we need to find the 7 groups that burned on longer than we expected them to. Yeah, they went through the extinction event and persisted.
split into 2 distinct species. In this tree, the common ancestor of mice and humans is shown by the node indicated by the arrow. An important implication of nodes is that the branches leading away from them can be rotated without changing the relationships depicted by the tree.
Yep.
As shown here by rotating right.
Anyway, this is a lot of the same information, so I'm just going to give you a link to this video, but it's good to know that this exists. That's cool. We're getting a lot of the same information here.
It's important to keep in mind that my cladogram only showed the organisms that I selected in the homologous characters I was tracing. Cladograms may not show other characteristics that evolved along lineages.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, where I'm like, yeah, you could have talked about limbs, could have talked about bones, could have talked about all kinds of different things like that. And, yeah, not every cladogram is gonna have every feature. Like, there's too many, you know? So you got to kind of pick and choose which ones are relevant.
Not only can cladograms have different branching patterns, as I mentioned, but I could even take our original cladogram and flip it over, as long as the evolutionary relationship still can be read consistently from root to tip. Cladograms also don't even have to be in a branching type of shape. For example, a circular cladogram is a thing. On that.
Yep, there's a lot of these that you'll see. In fact, there's some really good, like, go. There's lots of different ways that you can draw a cladogram like this. A phylogeny. There's one right there. Yeah. Archaea, bacteria, excavata, amoebozoa, archaeoplastida, fungi, metazoa. There you go. There's one like this. That's a cool one. Yeah. Back when I was teaching full-time, this is right before COVID hit, I was doing a huge wall-sized phylogeny. This would have been in late February, early March. Let's see here. There we go. I had this up on the wall of the classroom, and we were planning on, for the rest of the year, the students, like any time that we would encounter a different organism outside, plant or an animal or a fungus or whatever, and they were excited about it, we'd take a picture, figure out what it is, and then the next day go back to the classroom and have like a printed image of that critter and put it up on the wall. It was, I was really excited about this. And then COVID happened. And we didn't go back to the classroom for the whole rest of the school year. So we were teaching remotely after this for a while. Until the end of the school year. So that would have been from mid-March through June. And so switched to doing a digital version. Well, what I did is that I made that similar like blank branching diagram like that, and I put it together as like a PDF packet that I could email out to the parents, and then they could print for their kids, and there were assembly instructions so that every kid at home had a big like 4 foot by 5 foot big tree of life there. I'm trying to find it, but I've got so many. I took so many wildlife pictures during the first part of COVID. There it is there. Yes. Oh no, we didn't email them out. I forgot. The office at the school, they printed a bunch of copies, and then, or maybe I printed a bunch of copies? I forget. The school covered the cost, which is really cool, and then we mailed it out physically to all the families. And so that when we would do our teaching over Zoom, I would do a thing every day where I would say, well, we're going to talk about this one particular critter right here, this plant or animal or mushroom or whatever. We're going to talk about it a little bit, and then we're all going to put it on our tree. So it was an interactive activity that the kids could follow and do at home, even though we were all remote. This is all over Zoom. So it was a lot of fun. And we had this thing like totally full by the end. It was so neat. Yeah, and then they also had colored markers so they could draw on additional little branches. So like, let's draw another little yellow branch here for another kind of amphibian. Yeah, this was it was so much fun. Yeah. And I like that dinosaurs had a really prominent place here too. And birds are a branch that come off of the dinosaurs, because that's how it is, you know? Yeah. It's funny, I don't have turtles on here. I was neglecting the turtles back then. Shame, you know? Anyhow. Yeah. But yeah. Anyhow. I almost forgot about this. This was so much fun. I was really proud of this at the time. I wanted to like write this up as a short paper on like evolution education, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll do that someday. And I ran out of steam there. So many things. It's the same time that I started streaming here on Twitch, and I think that kind of started taking up the majority of my my free time. Now I do this full time, so I can't complain. And like Nam saying says, when are you going back in the field? Maybe some jacketing? That might be March, April, something like that. I'd like to go back out to St. George at some point. But we'll see. Like, we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, let's continue with our phylogenies video. And Arculus says, what's your favorite phylum not related to dinosaurs? Oh, Gav1816, thank you for the follow. Favorite phylum not related to dinosaurs. So dinosaurs are part of phylum Chordata, which is all of the vertebrate animals are the same phylum as dinosaurs. So if I have to pick one that's outside of Chordata, that's tricky. Yeah, different animal phyla. This is not going to be all of them, probably, but some. Nine phyla of animals, 9 main ones. Let's see. Porifera, these are sponges. Cnidaria are things with stinging cells, like jellies and anemones and stuff like that. Corals. Platyhelminthes are things like flatworms and nudibranchs, I think. Nematodes, your true worms, annelids, arthropods, mollusks, echinoderms, and then chordates. So dinosaurs are part of phylum Chordata, the animals with notochords. What's my favorite non-chordate phylum? I don't know. In the development, manufacture, and tactical use of atomic weapons. That's tricky. I don't know. I've never had to think about that before. Yeah, Deathsaurus says bugs. Well, but what is a bug, though? So arthropods, insects, and spiders, they often get called bugs, but are snails a kind of bug? What about worms? Are worms bugs? You know? To some people, bats are bugs. You know? Classic Calvin and Hobbes comic strip here. What am I gonna do about this report on bats? You gotta help me, Hobbes. First, let's make a list of what we know. Yeah, it's a great way to start. Number 1, what are bats? Calvin says, they're bugs, right? Yeah, put that down. Number 1, bats equals bugs. Hobbes says, are you sure? They fly, right? They're ugly and hairy, right? Come on, this is taking all day. Bug is a very imprecise kind of term, unless you're talking about like the true bugs, which is like a subgroup of insects with sucking mouth parts. I think aphids are part of this group. So, yeah. Anyway. Are we talking tiny critters or true bugs or any insects as tactical grays? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Wolvulus says, do you have to memorize any cladograms during your paleontology studies? I wouldn't say memorize, but just have like a basic understanding. Like, I've never had a situation where somebody's like, Danny, right now, draw a cladogram of our current understanding of Ornithopoda or something. Like, but having like a basic internal understanding of like where we think different groups belong is good to have. Yeah, but it's not like it's something to memorize because like, again, we can twist around the cladograms that there are nodes, like the actual like how it looks doesn't really matter. It's more about the relationships. If you're understanding who's more closely related to whom, that's all you really need. Yeah, and plus, you know, with new discoveries, these things shift around a lot too. So it's very different from, say, memorizing something like this that doesn't change as much, like the geological time scale. You know? Carboniferous, Permian, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Paleogene, Neogene, Quaternary. That's not gonna change anytime soon. So this is cool to memorize. And like you could memorize the individual like stages within each period. You know, Cenomanian, Turonian, Coniacian, Santonian, Campanian, Maastrichtian. Those are like, that's a good thing to have memorized if you're gonna be working in the Upper Cretaceous period. It's good to have these in order, to know when, which one comes after the next. But, you don't really memorize the cladograms because, like, I don't know, they shift around a lot. They're a bit more arbitrary than something like this, More arbitrary and also more specific. This is good general knowledge stuff. It's a really good idea to memorize this. And if you can come up with neat mnemonics for it, all the better. Like, here, I'll show you. I've got... watch out, sweetie pie. Here's Planet Ocean. Where did that go? Control book. Here we go. Yeah. There's some fun mnemonics for this, for those geological time periods. Oh, sorry, soundboard. So like, say we're looking at these different stages, these epochs within the Cenozoic era, the Age of Mammals. Here's a mnemonic for remembering this. Mnemonic number 2. There we go. Yeah. Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, Holocene. That's... Here we go. Paleontologists eat only murky plankton porridge, hot. There you go. That's how you can remember. Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, Holocene. Oh, yeah. Explains a lot, says Ty Thumbs Attack. Yeah. And there's another one. It's difficult to do for the actual, like, time periods, because there's more of them. But this one goes from the Cambrian up until the Cretaceous. And it's... Crying over sleeping dragons may puzzle people, terrify, or joyfully convert. That's Cambrian through Cretaceous. I've been working on one that goes from the Cambrian all the way up through the Quaternary. And one of these days, I want to really do a... I'm going to, like, ask a music person to help me, like, make a song out of it. Put it up on TikTok and just spread it far and wide. Let the world have it so that geologists can use this in their classrooms. Students can learn it, all of that. I want something really catchy that, like, it can help people remember these things. But, here's what I got so far. For the pre-Cambrian up until... the Quaternary. So paleontologists can't ordinarily silence devils missing pens permanently. Try just creating palettes near Quakers. So that's Precambrian, Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, Permian, Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Paleogene, Neogene, Quaternary. So I tried to get each of those words to sound like the word that it's reminding you of. So, like, missing is Mississippian, pens is Pennsylvanian, permanently is Permian, tri is Triassic, just is Jurassic, creating is Cretaceous. Oh, yeah. And an Animaniac style. There you go, Lilith. Yeah. So, one of these days, I'll sit down with a musician or a composer or somebody, and we'll come up with something like that. I've got a friend from high school who might be perfect for this kind of thing. We'll see. But, yeah. But yeah. And a song listing just the eras I could probably do, says Charlie's Dragon? That might be useful, yeah. Yeah. Although, which eras do you want to include? Like, I only ever really think about the Mesozoic, obviously, and the Paleozoic before it. and then the Cenozoic that we're in now. But before that, before the Paleozoic, you've got the Neoproterozoic, the Mesoproterozoic, the Paleoproterozoic, and like only people who are really interested in like the origins of life or Snowball Earth or things like that, do they ever really think about these things? The Neo-Archean, Meso-Archean, Paleo-Archean. Like, I never encounter these terms because I don't run in those circles. That's not something that I ever have to worry about. So yeah. Ask Thug Shells. There you go, Otter to it. Would you include the Taylor Swift Eras tour? Maybe if I want to get sued, Arculus. Yeah. And Lenina says, mnemonics are fun. I came up with my own for the Great Lakes. Shaking my head, eating Oreos. Oh, my is Michigan, M-I. Head is Huron. E is Erie. O is Ontario. What's S? Superior. Okay. I like that, Lenina. That's cool. That's cool. CP. Seriously, they're hard. The divisions of time segments. So those could be, you're talking about like period versus epoch versus stage versus era or eon. Yeah, I don't know. Those get a little arbitrary in a weird way, Claire. So like, go up to the top, like epochs. We talk about the Paleocene, Eocene, Oligocene. These are epochs, but Upper Cretaceous, is that an epoch? And like, Campanian is an age, but I don't know. It gets a little bit more. I don't feel like we have to think about this as much, you know? Yeah. There you go. That's for cell division, right, Murph? Pregnant monkeys attack teenagers. Prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. I like that. Yeah. Anywho, yeah. Interesting stuff. I don't know how we got on this, but it's been fun. Yeah, one of these days, we'll come up with a catchy tune for this so that people can remember the, well, there are songs already that I found on YouTube, but I don't feel like they've really taken off. So this has 19,000 views from Geo Girl. Let's take a look.
First you gotta start with the Precambrian, then Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, and Devonian. Then we go to the Mississippian, and Pennsylvanian, and the Permian. Now we're at the Mesozoic era. This era only has 3 periods in its time interval, and these include the Triassic and Jurassic and Cretaceous. Now the Cenozoic.
Is it as good as the Amniote song? You know, it's different, Deathsaurus.
Starts with the
I don't know if anything's as good as the Amniote song.
Eocene, Oligocene, then the Miocene and Pleistocene, then Holocene, which is where we're at right now. That's the Cenozoic era. Yeah. Let's start over one more time. First you gotta start with the Precambrian.
Look at the closed captions just gave up. Oh, there we go.
Then we go to the Mississippian and Pennsylvanian and the Permian. Now we're in the Mesozoic era.
And the tricky thing is that in Europe, they don't do Pennsylvanian and Mississippian. They just say Carboniferous. They just lump them into the Carboniferous because in Europe, those two periods aren't really separated stratigraphically. Like there is no, I don't think there's like an unconformity in between them or whatever. They're undifferentiated. So I came up with another version of this. Yeah, in Europe, paleontologists can't ordinarily silence devil caravans permanently. Instead of devils missing pens, it's devil caravans. Caravan for Carboniferous. Also, caravan. In the UK, that's what they call a trailer or a fifth wheel or something. They call it a caravan. Try just creating pallets near Quakers. That one remains the same. But missing pens becomes caravans in Europe. Carboniferous instead of Pennsylvanian and Mississippian. So, yeah. And Wolvie says, that's how I learned it when I was young. Carboniferous. Yeah, yeah. So you'll notice on here, you have the Carboniferous with the Pennsylvanian and Mississippian as like subdivisions of it. In the US and Canada, we say Pennsylvanian, Mississippian. But Europeans generally just say Carboniferous. Maybe if I were an American paleontologist in, say, I don't know, England, studying rocks of this age, I would just call it Carboniferous because in England, I don't think you have a distinction between Pennsylvanian and Mississippian. It's not like you can tell that from the rocks. There's no division there. So, yeah. Anyhow. And species, genus, Starmie. Yeah, so that's tricky. When we're talking about that, Starmie, that's kind of an outdated concept, which is why I wouldn't sweat too much memorizing those. Yeah. Here we go. These, the different ranks in classification: domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, because basically species is the only one of these that actually like matters. And then genus, I guess, too. Like the more broad you get, the less and less relevant it really is. Like the less you can actually compare from one to the other. So like different species, a species is like a biological reality to a certain extent. It should be a population of organisms that interbreed and produce offspring, and yeah. But even there, the borders are kind of squishy. You get up to genus, and it means even less. You can compare one species to another, and you're more or less comparing apples to apples. But when you're comparing different genera together, one genus, another genus, two genera, you're not really, it's like it could be an apples to oranges comparison. So the broader you go, it's like, what are we even talking about, you know? It becomes more and more arbitrary, which is why you don't really like, this sort of thing doesn't really matter that much, you know? Yeah. So, for instance, some recent classifications based on modern cladistics, based on the actual evolutionary relationships, have explicitly abandoned the term kingdom, noting that some traditional kingdoms are not monophyletic, meaning they do not all consist of descendants of a common ancestor. So the term flora for plants, fauna for animals, and in the 21st century funga for fungi, are also used for life present in a particular region or time. Yeah, so... yeah. Anyway, so basically everything above the level of species is just increasingly whatever, you know? Like, these are terms of convenience that we use. Family, order, class, phylum, kingdom. But, like, there's not necessarily, like, a biological reality underpinning that, if that makes sense. So, yeah. The others are even more wishy-washy. Exactly, Charlie's Dragon, yeah. Yeah. And Charlie's Dragon says the rest can be just summed up as clades. Yeah, that's the thing, is that when good old Carl von Carolus Linnaeus, when Linnaeus came up with this whole system, he didn't understand evolution. He didn't think that living things changed over time. And when you don't have that understanding, you kind of don't understand nature, you know? So that's why, like, this paradigm that people have used for a long time, it kind of falls apart. The more you study these things in depth, the more it, like, you realize that they don't fit into these neat boxes, you know? So yeah. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, Starmy, like the whole... There's the... What is it? King Philip... pleased my Aunt Sally or whatever, like, it's not... It's kind of an outdated thing. Like, nobody really cares anymore in biology. Yeah. So, yeah. PEMDAS, there you go, Sharkeek, yeah. Yeah, first you have phylum, and then you have exponents, and then multiplication, and then you have domain. Yeah. And then species. Anyway. And plant subdivision. Yeah, plant phylogeny is wild. Yeah. And hello to you too, Ms. Blue Skies. Good to have you here. Anyway, let's get back to our video before I go even further afield.
Mentioned, but I could even take our original cladogram and flip it over, as long as the evolutionary relationship still can be read consistently from root to tip. Cladograms also don't even have to be in a branching type of shape. For example, a circular cladogram is a thing. On that note, if you're exploring the different cladogram diagrams these can be represented in, there are a lot of programs that can build cladograms or phylogenetic trees.
And TNT.
And I just said phylogenetic tree. A note on that term. It can be very common in conversation and textbooks to have the word cladogram used interchangeably with the word phylogenetic tree.
Right, but as I understand it, and I might be totally wrong here, we'll see when we unpause. I think of a cladogram as being like a branching diagram that like an analysis spits out, whereas a phylogenetic tree is like you could just kind of draw it. You could freehand it, whereas a cladogram is like generated by a program or something, by a specific like method. That's my understanding. We'll see if that holds up.
Some sources use the term phylogenetic tree specifically when there is more detail. For example, the branch lengths are likely to be drawn intentionally to reflect the scale of time, and there's more data behind it, such as DNA data. Phylogenetic trees can be massive. Highly recommend a quick search for phylogenetic tree of bees and flies.
Yeah, okay. Come on, BioArchive. Promise I'm human. Let me in. Look at all the authors on this paper. Holy cow. Where's the image? Put an image in new tab. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. Huh. Anyway, so I think maybe I did kind of have this wrong, where a phylogenetic tree is a more specific thing than a cladogram. So phylogenetic tree would fall under the category of cladograms? Is that essentially what this is? Have I been thinking about this backwards?
And you'll see what we mean. The main point is that cladograms and phylogenetic trees help us visualize possible evolutionary relationships among groups of organisms. Building cladograms helps us practice how to group the organisms by evidence such as homologous structures or molecular data, and these models can be altered as we gather new data. To learn more about how this data can show evolutionary relationships, you can check out our video on evolution. Well,
nice.
That's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
Cool stuff. Here is a link. And holy cow, it's almost 6:30 already. We got to get to our Mosasaur news. everybody who stuck around until this point, thank you for doing so as we've been talking about this. I've had fun. But, yeah. Let's talk for a minute about mosasaurs. Mosasaurs are these cool ocean-going lizards that lived during the Cretaceous, during the last period in the age of dinosaurs. If you've seen any of the Jurassic World movies, I think they all feature mosasaurs at this point, right? It's not a particularly good depiction in, like, Jurassic World, but some of you probably remember this. Here we go.
Are already eating today.
Yeah, they're not actually that big. But at least this is like introducing people to the concept of a mosasaur, you know? Yeah, I didn't know, right, Shark Geek? Yeah. Those critters aren't least concern. Why should you be feeding that to a mosasaur? Anyway, mosasaur. People are familiar with this concept. Some of them got really, really big. Not that big. They're not 200 feet long. But things like Mosasaurus hoffmanni, they did get very large. Yeah, so you know, like the size of maybe a killer whale or a sperm whale. Like they got large for sure. They're big animals. Some of the largest mosasaurs. So there we go. There's a depiction next to some killer whales. Big, big critters. Not the sort of thing that you'd want to see silhouetted under your rowboat out on the open ocean or in a river. Yeah. So they're traditionally thought of as oceanic animals. We think of mosasaurs as living out in the open ocean, but last October, I got to go out into the field, the Hell Creek Formation in North Dakota. This is on the pre-SVP field trip last year. So I posted this on Blue Sky, visiting the easternmost exposures of the Hell Creek Formation in the world during the pre-SVP North Dakota field trip. And there's mosasaur teeth and vertebrae mixed in with the dinosaur material? Wild stuff. So this is a like fluvial environment here. So this is an ancient river system. And there's mosasaur teeth? So I posted this last October. It was October 30th, 2024. And 4 days ago, Clint Boyd replied to this post. Clint Boyd is, I think, the state paleontologist of North Dakota. But I got to hang out with him before SVP last year. He says, now the paper on those mosasaur discoveries is published, and here it is. Super cool. King of the Riverside, a multi-epoxy approach offers a new perspective on mosasaurs before their extinction. So they have really good evidence here that mosasaurs were hanging out in fresh water. Many of us had long suspected that, like, yeah, maybe they'd occasionally swim in up through an estuary and into fresh water in search of food. Why not? But they may have regularly done this. This may have been a normal thing for them. So, really cool. Really, really cool. Yeah. So the abstract, which is the... Well, here, let's open the PDF here, which is Open access.
Access granted.
In a minute, I'll give you a couple of videos that help explain this in greater detail, too. But let's just look at the abstract here. So this is the actual scientific paper. It is open access. Here's a link right here. Wow, so you can open this up at home. No paywall to fight. There we go. King of the Riverside. I love doing this. It's so cool to be able to share a scientific paper with all of you. As scientists, this is how we communicate our work to one another. This is like the basic currency of science is scientific papers. We publish them in scientific journals. They go through like this big process, what we call peer review. I've talked about this in depth before. I'm not going to do that now. But anyway, just understand that like when we are communicating our findings to one another through the literature, this is how it is. Like this is the raw scientific literature you're seeing here. This is straight from the science horse's mouth, so to speak. And I think it's really important for people to be able to see this. You know, you hear about new scientific studies in the news. You know, I say like maybe you're driving home from work or driving to work and you hear the radio DJs. Does anybody still listen to terrestrial radio? Anyway, you can get this kind of, you know, that radio banter, you know? Like this.
And do my graveyard smash.
Doing the Monster Mash with you on this beautiful Valentine's Day.
Marty, why did you play that song today? There must be thousands of love songs.
Well, it's kind of a love song. All the monsters enjoying each other's company, you know, dancing, holding their evil in check.
You played the wrong record, didn't you?
Why are you doing this to me?
It's like that inane radio banter. Well, Chuck, did you hear that scientists have just discovered that chocolate can actually reduce your risk of cancer? Oh, wow, I better go home and buy a bunch of Hershey bars. Like, that's... You hear about scientific studies in contexts like that, and that's generally the only place that the general public ever really, like, hears about this. You see it on the news, you hear about it on the radio, you see a headline somewhere. Very few times do people actually get an opportunity to like see the original scientific literature, which is why I get so excited about showing this, you know? So yeah. I love college radio too, Miss Blue Skies, yeah. And we had a great radio station in Bozeman, Montana. College radio really is the best. Anywho. So yeah, I like to be able to show off the original literature whenever I get the chance, especially when it's open access. Gotta love that. So we'll look at the abstract here, and we'll talk about it a bit. So for those of you who are not familiar, the abstract is like a short summary of the paper. It's like, bam, here it is. It's kind of like a trailer for a movie, but if the trailer for the movie also gave away the ending of the movie. An abstract is a summary, including, you know, there's lots of spoilers in it. So, it goes, the discovery of a mosasaurine tooth, North Dakota Geological Survey specimen 12217, in the Hell Creek Formation of Morton County, North Dakota, adds to the growing evidence that mosasaurs, traditionally considered marine reptiles that live in the ocean, could inhabit freshwater environments. What? So speaking of drive time radio, we've got all the stupid sound effects.
That belongs in a museum.
Hold on to your butts.
Anyway, this tooth was found in a context devoid of other marine taxa. So no other ocean critters in these rocks, just the mosasaur. suggesting the individual may have ventured into freshwater environments. The morphology of the tooth supports a conservative referral to the tribe Protonathodontinae, it's related to Pronathodon, and stable isotope analyses on a carbonate and phosphate fractions of tooth enamel, along with strontium-strontium ratios, indicate a freshwater origin. So this animal was living in a freshwater environment, growing its teeth in this environment, and those teeth have those isotopic signatures for fresh water within them. If this animal is living out in the ocean for a long time, in salt water, the teeth would have different strontium isotopes. Nope, those are freshwater isotopes in those teeth. These findings challenge the notion that mosasaurs were exclusively marine predators. And this paper highlights the potential ecological flexibility of mosasaurs during the late Maastrichtian. At the very end of the age of the dinosaurs, at the very end of the Cretaceous, mosasaurs, they existed in the oceans, and apparently in the rivers too. Just bonkers. Yeah. Yeah, so this was a freshwater mosasaur, not just a mosasaur coming into freshwater. Yeah. At least it was sticking around in the freshwater for long enough for its teeth to show that signature. So that means that for as long as those teeth were growing, maybe like a year or more, or at least a few months, however long it takes to generate that tooth and then lose it, they're there in fresh water. Which is interesting. So this study employs a multi-proxy approach to compare the tooth's isotopic signatures with other taxa, so with other kinds of mosasaurs, or other animals, from the same and nearby formations, including the teeth of other mosasaurines. So they're like, could this be a fluke, or maybe there's something wrong with our methodology, and maybe if we use these same methods, maybe even T-Rex teeth will come out as marine, or whatever. Like, maybe there's something wrong with our method. No, they tested that. That's not the case. So this provides insights in the environmental transitions of the Western Interior Seaway towards the end of the Cretaceous. So the Western Interior Seaway. This might not load right now. Let's try this. Toward the end of the Cretaceous period in North America. So just to give you your bearings, this is Florida today down here. This is California, Mexico, Canada. At the end of the Cretaceous, North America was bisected and sometimes trisected, it seems, by the Western Interior Seaway. So a shallow, almost Mediterranean-like or almost like Caribbean-like seaway. When sea levels rose, the interior of Western North America was flooded. This was an ocean in here. Shallow, warm ocean. And you had all kinds of mosasaurs and plesiosaurs and leatherback turtles. Ancestors of today's leatherback. They were swimming around in here in Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, South and North Dakota. It was ocean back then. You could get beachfront property in North Dakota, but well, good luck buying property in the Cretaceous period, but you know what I mean. If you were to take a time machine from Bismarck, North Dakota, go back in time to the late Cretaceous, when you arrive, you might be underwater. So cool to think about. Yeah. Rent was insane. Up these blue skies, yeah. You could, 1 month's rent might cost you an arm and a leg. To a hungry mosasaur. Nope, wrong button. Shoot.
Wow!
It wasn't.
The land of make-believe!
It's not in the land of make-believe. It's just the Cretaceous. I didn't mean to press that button. Anyway. Crimson Carnotaurus is just what the Midwest needs. Its property market getting shot up with beachfront property. There you go. Yeah. Anywho. Yeah. But that was greasy water, not salt water. So Space Gnome, this all would have been salt water at the time. In the same way that the Caribbean today, or the Mediterranean, is also salt water. This would have been very salty, but as the Western Interior Seaway started to shrink at the very end of the Cretaceous, there would have been proportionally more fresh water coming into that environment, making it kind of brackish. So they talk about that in this paper. Yeah. So this provides insights into the environmental transitions of the Western Interior Seaway towards the end of the Cretaceous. This comprehensive approach aims to provide deeper insights into the behavior, ecology, and potential migratory patterns of mosasaurs beyond their known marine habitats, enhancing our understanding of their adaptations to rapidly changing environments during the late Cretaceous. Very cool stuff. So, Clint Boyd, who I think is the state paleontologist for North Dakota, he let me know about this, responding to a post over a year old. This is I really appreciate Clint doing this. This is awesome. Yeah. So Clint is one of the authors. He's like the mosasaur guy on the paper. He's an expert on mosasaurs. He named Jormungandr. Did I spell that right? I did. Yeah, so this critter, Jormungandr. There's a lot of, shall we say, Scandinavian cultural influence in North Dakota, and I think Clint might be, that might be part of his heritage. So, when he named a new mosasaur, he named it Jormungandr. Yeah, Jormungandr Valhallensis. There you go. The, what is it? Great Norse serpent of Valhalla. Yeah. It's not the biggest mosasaur, but it's plenty big. Yeah. Anywho, so Clint is the mosasaur guy, but then another author on this paper, Melanie Doring, the lead author, she's an isotopes gal. She works on geochemistry. And she produced a video about this with her sister.
My name is Kaylee, and today we are joined by my sister who has another paper being published. And today we are going to talk all about the mosasaur.
Cool stuff.
Introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
So my name is Melanie During. I am Kaylee's older sister. And I'm a vertebrate paleontologist. So I specialize in all things dead and big with spinal column.
Can you tell us about how the mosasaur tooth was discovered and what the significance of this find was?
Absolutely. In 2022, I
That
was
is a good
not
use
present.
for social media death stories.
I
Yeah.
actually got to
Yeah.
know this crew the year after. So in 2022,
And thank you, Tactical Grace, for being here. Appreciate you.
People from the NDGS, so the North Dakota Geological Survey, held a dig. And this...
I think that might be Clint right there, actually. Right here. Yeah, so I've not worked with, but traveled around North Dakota a little bit with some of these folks.
And this is the type of dig, actually, you can sign up for. So if you ever want to dig with the NDGS, you go for Friends of NDGS, and you can dig with them. This was one of those...
ndpaleofriends.org. There we go. Friends of North Dakota Geological Society Paleo. Here's a link. If you want to volunteer on a paleontological dig, they might be happy to have you. So yeah. Or if you want to sponsor them, it's also really important. Yeah. Anyhow, cool stuff.
Digs, and one of the staff members found a T-Rex tooth in such abominable shape they had to put a plaster jacket around it. So this tooth, T-Rex tooth, was, I mean, they're pretty big, like this big, but it was shattered, so they had to cover it. So they glued it, they put a plaster jacket over it, and to get the jacket out, you have to trench around it, dig a little mushroom out of it, so you can flip it. And
you all know how jacketing works. You've seen me do this in the field.
Trissa, a good friend of mine by now, accidentally saw something fall out. And she looked closely and she observed that it was, in fact, a mosasaur tooth that fell out. And then when the jacket
So again, this is weird. You shouldn't have mosasaur teeth in, like, you know, terrestrial strata. This is bizarre. You know, nobody was expecting this. Super cool.
Got back to the lab. The interns started preparing it from the other end, and then they found a brachychampsa, which is a type of crocodilian upper jaw on the other side. So we have a T-Rex tooth, T-Rex, terrestrial. We have a mosasaur tooth, marine. And we have a freshwater crocodilian upper jaw. So yeah, that raised a bunch of questions.
Yeah, so that was the significance of this find. That mosasaur tooth combined
I mean, you start to wonder who invaded whose territory here.
Yeah.
Cool stuff. Again, here is a link to this video. I'm going to put right here in the chat for you. So I recommend you take a look at that if you want to learn more about this. If you want to, like, I don't know, this would be a wonderful opportunity for somebody trying to get more into paleontology. You could read the paper, maybe do that after watching the video. I've got another video here for you too, Raptor Chatter, whom I met at SVP last year. He's got a video about this as well.
The BBC and its creators put too much thought into their opening sequence, in which a Tyrannosaurus leads his clutch
I like
to
the way
an
that he uses
offshore
this as a
island
framing
to
device
feast on
for,
large
for this
marine
video.
turtles, and in which one of those clutch gets eaten by a mosasaur. And I say this because Tyrannosaurus rex comes from the river facies of the Hell Creek Formation, meaning it mostly would have lived alongside those rivers and also oxbow lakes and floodplains.
So this is like an excellent little intro to the paper, and then you should check out Melanie Doring's video too if you want to learn more about this. It's good stuff. Here's a link to that video from Raptor Chatter right there. Yeah. Pretty neat. It's interesting because they're... Throughout the history of multicellular life, throughout the history of tetrapods, let's say, you've got a lot of instances of terrestrial groups becoming aquatic and then marine, and then you have some of them coming back into freshwater environments. A good example of this would be like river dolphins. So river dolphins, what's funny is that they're not actually related to one another. Yeah. But each one of these different species of river dolphin, different clades, they each came back into freshwater from marine origins. So their ancestors all lived in the ocean. So now that we're starting to understand that some mosasaurs lived in freshwater environments, at least for part of their lifetimes, it helps kind of complicate their story in a really interesting way. Let's see. River dolphin. River dolphins here. It makes a lot of sense though. Like, we've got multiple instances of dolphins going back into the river. So here we've got the Boto, the Franciscana rather, and the Chenjiang dolphin, which I think might be extinct at this point. Is that the Yangtze River dolphin? Anyway, these guys are not close relatives of the, there we go, South Asian river dolphin over here, Platanista gangetica. Or the Irrawaddy dolphin, who also lives in rivers. Its closest relative is the spinner dolphin. Yeah, it's interesting that, like, multiple times dolphins have gone from living in the ocean to living in rivers in different parts of the world. You've got them in the Amazon, you've got them in the Irrawaddy River and the Ganges River. South America, Asia, like, this keeps happening. And so it would make a lot of sense that marine reptiles would do this too. Over the vastness of the Mesozoic era, I'm sure you had multiple instances of plesiosaurs and mosasaurs and probably sea turtles going back into freshwater environments to take advantage of resources there that they couldn't get out in the ocean. Ty Thomas says, make up your minds, please, dolphins. They kind of don't have to. They've got the freedom to do that, and that's super cool, you know? Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. Neat that we have this for mosasaurs still. And we're just starting to understand that for the first time. That's exciting. We've got freshwater plesiosaurs too, from North Africa at this point. Yep. Some plesiosaurs may have lived in freshwater river systems. Pretty cool. So yeah, there you go, plesiosaurs. We don't have that for ichthyosaurs yet, to my knowledge, Crimson Carnotaurus. But it might just be a matter of time, you know? And then you get other marine reptile groups from the Mesozoic, like the Metriorhynchids, these ocean-going crocs. They're not crocodiles, but they're crocodilomorphs. Ocean-going crocs. I love this old illustration. Oh, come on. Yeah. Did any of them ever become freshwater again after a while? We don't know. So far, we only have like a few examples of like ocean-going crocs. There must have been many, many species over their tenure on our planet. And we have a few of them so far. And what's cool is we actually have one, yeah. Look, right there. On our phylogeny there. Our cladogram. Anywho. Would there have been freshwater Metriorhynchids during the Mesozoic? Maybe. I don't know. It seems more likely now. Their heyday was before the mosasaurs. Maybe, you know. It's cool to think about. It's very cool to think about. So anyway, with that, it's probably about time to wrap up this broadcast. I've got other stuff I got to do tonight. I know this has been a short stream because I started 2.5 hours late today. We're going to have some other cool stuff tomorrow. Don't go away just yet. We are going to wrap up today's broadcast. Put a Smilodon under our credits there. But don't go away. We're going to see if we can raid into somebody else doing some science. What are our options right now? Let's see. Science Streams is on. I'm not too early tonight. Excellent. Oh, there's Lita on the screen. Well, very cool. We can go hang out with Lita of Science Streams. Excellent. Everybody, thank you for being here with me today. The internet is a big place. So many different things going on, and you've been spending time here with me, talking about the history of life on Earth, talking about evolution, phylogenies, freshwater mosasaurs, leatherback turtles. I appreciate that. I appreciate your time and attention and your questions. And it's nice to just hang out. Thank you, especially to everybody appearing in our credits here, from new followers to subscribers, resubscribers, gifters, and cheerers. Everybody who keeps me here on the air through their financial support. I appreciate that more than you know. And that Venn diagram, I think, fully encloses our moderators as well, who are some of our most stalwart supporters. I appreciate you so much, mods. These streams would not be possible without your help in keeping this a safe and welcoming community for everybody, so I'm deeply grateful. Thank you, everybody. And I hope to see you again tomorrow for some more paleontologizing. We may or may not be interviewing Andrew Milner tomorrow. We'll see. I gotta work things out with him.